Okay, it says I'm live. So we will start the 5-minute countdown. Give everyone enough time to show up. Hello. Good time zone to everyone in the chat. To Shub and Echo. I spelled yippee wrong. Oh, that's okay. Who cares? Apart from me. How dare you? Nice number for chapter. Okay. It was kind of unintentional, the chapters that I chose to read today. And that just so happened to be the number. It just happened to work out. Like it was a good place to break the second act into 2 parts. It just so happened that it is the number. We don't talk about it. Well, if you are enjoying the reading so far and you would like to support the channel, feel free to go buy my book. Link in the pinned comment or the description down below. Both will take you to the places you need to go. Also, did you know that in the last reading, we read roughly 77-ish pages? Now, this is by the ebook standards, because I'm reading off of the ebook version, because it's just easier for me. I was 77 pages of the ebook. I believe today it's only 65, roughly. It's gonna be great. Glorious. And I'm going to cringe a little bit. Because I have discovered that my high school self still managed to sneak its way in here. To some degree. And I'm sad. But I'll talk more about that at the end. So I hope you got a drink, a snack, and a nice, cozy little corner that you're snuggled up in. I know I am. A blanket here that I hardly used last time, but I have it all the same. During the live reading today, Lucre will be drawn. Ah! Everyone's favorite Snick boy. Lucre. I love Lucre. I am, in fact, in a corner. I am in the corner with you. I am the corner. Hello. Just gotta make sure that my whistle has been hydrated. All right. It is time for us to begin reading. Act 2. Discovery. Chapter 6. Kimberly has been to Gardal once before as part of a class trip. As soon as she, Jake, and Ethan step out on the other side of the archway, she inhales the air. The cold swirls in her chest comfortably, making her feel right at home. The group finds themselves standing at one end of a long wooded pathway lit with firelight lanterns hanging from tree branches overhead, creating a dim yet warmly lit entryway leading up to a distant wooden gate. The silence is strangely comforting as they approach the gate, their footsteps muffled by the dirt and their breaths that of awe and wonder. The leaves of the evergreens sway in the magical breeze only they can feel, creating a chorus of rustling. The heavy wooden gate standing at the end of this path is guarded by 2 armored brown Yafirs, standing on either side. The gate stands partly open, revealing a bustling street beyond, the cobblestones aligned with tightly packed wooden structures and a scattering of open-air forges, the distant ring of metal shaping accenting the murmur of the crowd. Off to their right, towering over the town, is Frostfall Mountain, most of its rocky face covered in bright white snow, its imposing figure nearly incomprehensible to her eyes. If she squints, Kimberly can make out the snow-covered walls of the mining town near its peak. "Leave the talking to me," Ethan says, holding up the navy blue keystone in his hand. Without much choice, Kimberly and Jake both nod and follow the husk to the guards. "Sure is much cooler than Asandra," Jake mutters beside her, his radiating heat lightly warming her right arm. He holds a sword loosely in his left hand, its tip scraping the ground as they walk. Kimberly shrugs back at him in reply. "Welcome to Gardal, wizards," one of the Yafirs says to them as they near. He holds out one of his paws towards the group expectantly. Ethan hands over his keystone to the guard. The guard turns over the keystone and inspects it closely, angling it to catch the light on its surface. After a long moment, he hands it back to the husk. "And the other 2?" he asks. "I'm taking responsibility for them." "Swear on the spirits that you will be held liable alongside them if they are ever punished in any way under the law of Gardal for as long as their visit lasts, even if they remain on the island without your presence." Ethan pauses, a strange unease briefly flashing across his face. "By the spirits of light and shadow, I swear to your terms." The guard nods and cracks a toothy grin. "Enjoy your stay in Varengard." With that, the 3 make their way through the gate and into the walled town of Varengard. "It's best if we find a guide if we want to venture around Frostfall," Ethan says to the other 2. "Without Shadow, I don't feel comfortable going there with just the 3 of us." "Where are we supposed to find one?" Jake inquires. "They're usually at the inns. I think there's a couple this way." They turn into a narrow side street, pressing up against the left side single file as other beings pass them on the right. Kimberly had forgotten how tightly packed Varengard is. With a large part of the forest around the town protected for historic reasons, the Yafir have had to make do with the space they've designated for themselves. Thus, many of their side streets are only slightly more narrow than those on Asandra. However, the benefits of the streets being so small is that some of the heat lingers from the fires from within the buildings and the warmth of all the beings constantly passing through. "There's one," Ethan announces, pointing to a hanging wooden sign up ahead, its face painted with a steaming bowl and a silver mug. Upon entering the inn, they're instantly hit with the strong smell of warm meat soup and the fruity tang of wine. Every table squeezed into the space is full, and the bar only has a few scattered seats remaining. The walls are decorated with all sorts of metal masterworks, from the likes of axes and hammers to large carving-covered sheets bedazzled with gemstones depicting the might of Yafir smiths in their forges. The pillars that hold the roof in place above them are also expertly carved, each one unique in its own way as they flow from top to bottom with sculpted shapes and figures. Without a word to the other two, Ethan steps up to the bar and flags down the Yafir tending to it. Busy place, Jake comments, looking around the packed room. I don't remember there being this many beings here in Varangard last year, Kimberly says. It's not a holiday, is it? No, I don't think so. At the bar, the Yafir Ethan had been talking to steps away, hurrying towards the tables by the back wall. Ethan folds his arms and leans up against the bar, eyeing the two still near the front door. Kimberly laces her fingers together, feeling uneasy. Frostfall Mountain is so big, it's hard to say where they should even start looking. And they don't have a whole lot of time to search, either. Jake doesn't have much time before he has to go back to Asandra for class, and when he has to leave, Kimberly might as well head back with him to prepare for her own. As much as she doesn't like skipping school, she hopes they can find Kelsey this cycle at the very least. She can't wait to finally meet her mother. What does she look like? What does she sound like? Will they get along? What has she been doing this entire time? Does she even remember Kimberly in the first place? Just thinking about their impending meeting makes her chest flutter eagerly. The barkeeper returns with a girl in tow. Her hair is bright orange, tied in a low ponytail that pokes out from under a light blue hat, with lively amber eyes and rosy cheeks. She wears a faded red jacket over a navy shirt, with pants made of brown leather and white snowshoes. Her shoulders are covered with a light gray cowl trimmed with enchantments in golden thread, and a pair of mittens hanging out of one of her pockets. At first, the girl appears confused and mildly annoyed, her lips pressed firmly together. However, when the Yafir waves a paw to Ethan, she freezes mid-step, her eyes widening as far as they'll go. Ethan's eyebrows shoot up in an instant, taken aback by her presence as well. Ethan? The girl asks in disbelief. Ethan's mouth opens in response, his lips shaping into unspoken words as his eyes flicker up and down the girl, trying to make sense of her presence. Before he can even manage to speak, the girl's mouth curves into a beaming smile and jumps forward, throwing her arms around his chest and burrowing her face into his shoulder. Ethan takes a surprised step backwards to prevent himself from stumbling, his arms out at his sides, unwilling to reciprocate her embrace. "Oh, Ethan," the girl says happily into his shoulder. "I knew you hadn't faded yet." Opal, the husk finally manages to stutter. Opal instantly straightens, still keeping him trapped in her arms as she stares into his eyes. "You remember me!" Of course I do. But you... Why... Oh, how long has it been? Opal muses, leaning in close to his face. I missed you, Eth. Finally, it seems like Ethan regains some sense of himself, and he leans away from Opal gently, turning his head away from her. Opal pauses, appearing taken aback by his action, then slowly lets him go, with a worried frown. "Eth?" she asks quietly. Ethan shakes his head. "Not here, Opal, please." Her shoulders sag upon hearing his response. What a surprise that they have run into a being that Ethan knows. He never struck Kimberly as the type to have a girlfriend, although the two of them being a former couple is the only thing that can explain the strange scene. It also makes her wonder how they even met in the first place, let alone grow close like that. She takes it upon herself to step forward, which draws Opal's attention, and holds out her hand in greeting. "Hi there, I'm Kimberly, one of Ethan's friends." Opal smiles back at her and shakes her hand, although Kimberly notices that the curve of her mouth seems slightly strained. "And this is my boyfriend, Jake," Kimberly quickly adds, nodding to Jake behind her. He briefly waves to Opal with his free hand from where he stands. That makes her relax, her grin shifting into something more genuine and friendly. "Oh, I didn't realize you were with him," Opal replies. "I'm Opal, Ethan's girlfriend." Out of the corner of Kimberly's eye, she sees Ethan do his best not to wince, although his face still scrunches up uncomfortably. Opal doesn't notice. "He never mentioned having a girlfriend before," Kimberly hums aloud, turning to him with a questioning eyebrow raised. "Oh?" Opal mutters, also turning to look at Ethan with a disappointed frown. "It's been 5 centuries, Opal," he finally defends himself. "I don't think we're still like that anymore." Opal blinks once, then smiles and shakes her head, turning back to Kimberly. "We've been apart for a while, but I'm sure we can get back together." Once again, Ethan appears troubled by this statement. Opal doesn't notice this either. "Jovan said that you were looking for a mountain guide," Opal asks, steering the conversation away from Ethan for the moment. Yes, we are," Kimberly nods. "We're looking for a wizard by the name of Kelsey Skyshield, and we think she's on Frostfall." Opal finishes in an instant. "I know her." Kimberly's heart leaps into her chest. She knows her mother? She lives up in the mining town. But why are you looking for her? Not here," Ethan interrupts Kimberly, nodding towards the packed seating area. While he has gone back to his usual flat scowl, it feels a little darker in tone than normal. "Can we take this somewhere more private?" "Sure," Opal agrees in an instant. Opal guides the group out of Varengard and into the thick forest of Gardal. She walks with a small spring in her step, almost as if she were about to break into a merry skip at any moment, though she does her best not to get too ahead of Ethan. The husk, however, tries not to stride by her side as much as possible. "So," Opal asks over her shoulder, "why are you all looking for Kelsey Skyshield?" "She's my mother," Kimberly replies honestly. Opal looks at Kimberly with wide eyes full of surprise. "Oh, she never mentioned she had a daughter." The remark stabs at Kimberly's heart, her hope wavering. Kelsey never brought up the fact she had as a daughter? She isn't expecting her mother to even recognize her after all these years, but if she doesn't remember her at all, then the reunion will either be extremely awkward or completely non-existent. "How do you know her?" she asks Opal, wanting to move past those dim thoughts as fast as possible. "I used to visit the miners all the time. I talked with her occasionally, though I wouldn't say we're friends. She's kind of cold. No pun intended." "Do you not visit them anymore?" Jake asks. Opal shrugs. "It's more like I can't." "Why?" "It's a long story." She sighs. Suddenly, she sharply angles to the right and steps off the dirt path and into the trees. "My cabin is this way." The 3 wizards share a glance between themselves before following behind. Opal lives pretty deep into the forest. "If we're going up Frostfall, we'll need a few things," Opal says as they weave between the tall pines. "Do any of you have snow clothes?" "No," Jake mutters. Kimberly shakes her head. Being a pyromancer and cryomancer respectively, neither of them should have to worry about getting too cold. Ethan, too, shakes his head in response to Opal's question. "Don't need it." Once Ethan finishes speaking, Opal promptly turns on her heel to face the 3, a dark scowl plastered across her face. "No, you'll need it, all of you." "Why?" Kimberly asks her. "Blizzards," is Opal's reply before turning back around. Eventually, there's a break in the trees, and the group of wizards step into a small clearing, a log cabin sitting in its center. It's dark in the windows, and no smoke billows from the chimney. Opal, however, rushes towards the front door, retrieving a key from her jacket pocket. She fiddles with the lock as the others make their approach and disappears inside without waiting for them to catch up with her. "Come on in," she calls from within. "Let me grab the snow gear from the back." One by one, the three enter the cabin. Although unlit by candle or fire, the light of the cycle that streams in through the windows is enough to let them see the front room clearly. A small kitchen area lines the back wall, as a sofa sits in front of the empty fireplace to their left. The far leftmost wall has been reserved for a long bookcase, which is completely filled with all sorts of colored leather spines of different sizes. But that's not to say that the room is tidy. Strewn about the floor are various pieces of paper covered in black ink. Dirty dishes are stacked high in the old wooden wash bin in the kitchen. It doesn't even seem like the cabin has indoor plumbing like the homes of ASTRIA. Even though the fireplace is empty of logs, it's covered in a thick layer of ash, and one side of the sofa has been taken up by a rather large rucksack. Ethan lets out a sigh of disappointment. 5 centuries and she still can't clean. "Girlfriend?" Kimberly inquires, remembering what Opal had said in the inn earlier. "She used to be my girlfriend," Ethan admits, "but we haven't seen each other for a long time. I thought she would have faded already." "Oh, when'd you two meet?" Jake asks. Ethan shifts his weight and eyes the far side of the main room, where a dark doorway stands. If she listens closely, Kimberly can hear Opal rummaging around back there. Ethan turns to the other two and lowers his voice to a whisper, saying, "We met last time I attended ASM. The last time before I met you guys." "So she doesn't know?" Kimberly asks him. Ethan shakes his head. "I didn't want to put her in danger, but I'd appreciate it if you don't tell her anyway." "Why?" If she doesn't already know by now, then it's none of her business." Kimberly nods back at him slowly. It makes sense that he'd not want to tell Opal about Shadow. If she knows, she knows. After all, it's a little hard to avoid all of the buzz about the new resident fragment Shadow back on Asandra. But it doesn't seem like she does, and so it's better to save the headache of explaining everything to her and simply let her continue believing Ethan is a regular wizard like the rest of them. Ethan lets slip a thankful grin and readjusts his hat, standing as straight as he can. "Right, blizzards. It might be from that thing she has." "She could be blessed," Kimberly poses. She doesn't actually know if her mother might be blessed like she is, but she'd not be surprised if she can also use snow. "Blessed or not, it could always be amplifying her magic as well," Ethan replies. "Between me and Kimstar, we shouldn't have much trouble navigating it," Jake says confidently. Ethan, however, doesn't seem convinced. Opal then appears from the back of the cabin, her arms full of various objects. Coats and mittens, rucksacks, and ropes, to name a few. She carries them over to the sofa and tosses the pile down with a loud grunt. She pulls free the coats and mittens and holds them up to the others with a grin. "If you want me to take you 3 up Frostfall, you're going to need to wear these." The coats and mittens are all white. Slowly, the 3 wizards step up to Opal and claim their set of snow gear. As Kimberly holds Opal's loaned coat in her hands, the white fabric shimmers before her very eyes and turns a light shade of icy blue. Her eyes widen, mildly impressed. She slips on the coat and fumbles with the copper buttons. She usually doesn't like wearing coats. She doesn't even own a coat. Not having her arms exposed feels a little weird, but it's a necessary sacrifice to make if she wants to see her mother. As she slips on the mittens, which go from white to navy blue as she holds them, she looks over at the boys. Jake's coat is a bright red, one that will certainly make him hard to miss in the middle of a blizzard, which he has tied around his waist for the moment as he fumbles with the leather strap that holds his gold shoulder pads in place. Knowing him, he's going to strap them back on again over the coat once he puts it on. Ethan, on the other hand, is currently in the middle of buttoning his own coat, which has turned void black. It's hard to tell if the color is supposed to be a reflection of his shadow magic or his death magic. I would offer snowshoes, Opal says to Kimberly as she stares at the cryomancer's heels, but I don't have any spares. I'll be okay. Kimberly tries to reassure her with a small smile. Opal, however, shakes her head. These aren't normal blizzards, but you'll still have to make do with what you have, I guess. She turns to Ethan in an instant. Do you need help with that, Eth? No, he grumbles back from under his hat. Opal disregards his reply and steps up to him anyway, her hands outstretched at the ready. Here, let me... Ethan turns away from her sharply. I said no. He returns to his buttoning without another word. Opal stands frozen before him, before lowering her hands and stepping away, appearing reluctant to leave him by himself. Hey, Opal, Kimberly speaks up, drawing her attention. She turns to face Kimberly, her expression crestfallen. Kimberly, however, nods to the rest of the equipment on the sofa. Will we need to carry that stuff too? Opal takes one look at the pile of equipment, then lets out a heavy sigh and nods, finally stepping away from Ethan. Yes, each rucksack has some basic survival gear in it in case something goes wrong. But I don't expect anything to go wrong. But you never know. It's happened before. There's some dried fruit and water containers, extra rope, and some fire packets for non-pyromancers. Opal opens up one of the rucksacks and retrieves what Kimberly suspects to be a fire packet, which, in her hands, appears to be nothing but a simple orange square. Opal holds up the fire packet for Kimberly and Jake to see. Do you know how to use one of these? No, Kimberly replies, shaking her head. I've never heard of a fire packet before. Opal musters a small smile of sympathy. Fair, fire packets don't really have much of a use outside of survival kits, so usually you only find them here on Gardal. But I know they're around other places too. It's simple, really. You just take the packet and clap your hands together. Opal places the packet in the center of her palm, then mimics clapping her hands together lightly so as to not unnecessarily trigger the packet. And it should light a small fire. It doesn't produce any heat, so it won't burn you, and it lasts a good long while if you shield it from water and snow. If you ever get separated or lost, just light one of these and hold it up as high as you can. And the rope... Opal puts the fire packet back into the rucksack she got it from and grabs one of the ropes that she had carried out. She holds it up in front of her like she did the fire packet, a bright yellow-green twist. When we get to Frostfall, we're going to tie ourselves together using these ropes, so when the blizzard hits, and I know it will, we'll be able to stay together. With that, Opal hands out the rucksacks and ropes. When she offers a set to Ethan, he takes them and steps away as fast as he can. She stands there staring at him, hurt, before busying herself with the rucksack that was on the sofa from when they first entered the cabin. Jake nudges Kimberly's shoulder and whispers in her ear, Stars, they're so awkward. Kimberly lets out a small sigh in agreement. It sure is odd to see these two act so childish around each other for their age. Be glad we're not like them, Kimberly says, mustering a small smile. Jake only chuckles and nods back. The moment they see snow in the grass, Opal stops the hike and beams at her followers. Ropes, every being! Ethan scowls as he twists to reach the rope that he tied to his rucksack, Kimberly and Jake doing the same. On one hand, he's glad to see Opal doing well. On the other, she just can't seem to take a hint. You should go in front of me, Jake says to Kimberly as the two help each other tie their bright yellow-green ropes around each other's waists. Kimberly just nods back at him wordlessly. A small, airy breath escapes Ethan's lips as he sets to work wrapping his own rope around himself. If not for the stars-forsaken coat adding to his layers, he'd not feel so bloated. Moving his arms around is a chore. Shadow chuckles lightly in his ear. I thought I told you to keep quiet, Ethan chides through gritted teeth. Electro's training. I don't want to disturb him. Ethan rolls his eyes as he fumbles with his knot. Have you really gotten over Opal? Shadow inquires. It knows much of Opal. For about a decade, she was all he would ever talk about, though sometimes it was through no fault of his own. Shadow loved the drama. Judging from its inquisitive tone, it probably still does. Ethan steals a glance at the enchanter, who stands awkwardly off to the side, her rope already around her waist. She watches the others with folded arms, her eyes trying desperately hard not to glance in Ethan's direction. When her gaze does eventually meet Ethan's, her cheeks flare and she instantly turns back to the other two behind him. Part of him feels like he was a little too hard towards her back at the cabin, yet at the same time, he doesn't feel like she deserves any apology. I don't know, he admits. I think I have. He waits for Shadow to speak, but the silence only grows louder. Has he gotten over Opal? He had no idea she was even still alive up until now. But seeing her here and talking to her again... He blows a puff of air through his gritted teeth, a storm of emotion swirling in his hollow chest. Sometimes he hates his own feelings. Who should I tie myself to? Kimberly asks Opal, as Jake is wrapping the other end of his rope to his girlfriend's waist. Looking to Opal for instruction as well, Ethan sees her blush for a mere moment as she replies, Ethan, and then he should tie himself to me, since I'm the guide, so I'll be going first. While he's not surprised by her answer, it makes him feel awkward all the same as he approaches Kimberly so she can tie herself to him. As she works on her knot, Opal walks up to him and points to the rope around her waist. Make sure it's tight, she tells him, her mouth twitching furiously as she tries her best to keep back a wild smile. Ethan keeps his mouth pressed firmly closed as he does what she told him to do. Tie a knot and make it tight. When he finishes, the four wizards now stand in a chain. Ready? Opal asks. Yep, Jake calls from the back. Yes, Kimberly chimes. Just go, Opie. Ethan sighs. It takes him a moment to realize that he just said her old pet name aloud. As soon as he does, he slaps a hand over his mouth, tilting his head downwards to hide beneath the brim of his hat, feeling the heat of his face flaring in an instant. Shadow's laughter rings in his ears. Opal says nothing. Instead, she puts one foot forward, tugging on Ethan's rope, indicating that it's time to walk. He, too, steps forward, taking in a deep breath to try and bury his embarrassment. He didn't mean to say it in front of Kimberly and Jake. Stars above, he must have sounded so stupid. Opie, Shadow echoes, making Ethan wince. I forgot you called her that. Stop, Ethan grumbles. It doesn't take them long to leave the green grass and forest behind as they finally enter the mountain proper. The snow sparkles all around them as they find themselves staring up a rather steep incline, sparsely decorated with evergreens and large boulders. The top of the mountain seems so far away from down here. Almost like a painting, Shadow breathes in awe. Ethan holds back his urge to nod, conscious of the others around him noticing the strange behavior. He's only ever seen frost fall a handful of times himself. The sight never ceases to impress him. Maybe we can come stargazing one of these nights, he suggests. The view must be spectacular from its peak, much better than the one from the castle back on Corridon, or from the dunes of Mirage. Shadow lets out a happy gasp that makes his head buzz. Electro's training, you said? He didn't want to stay in and wait around all cycle, Shadow admits. Ethan purses his lips as he stares at the snow under his feet. He shouldn't be overexerting himself just yet. But Eth, calm down, it's not like I'm going to tell Asna. But you have to keep an eye on him to make sure he doesn't hurt himself. A cold burst of irritation blossoms in Ethan's chest. He's doing fine. Shadow, I want to explore with you too, Shadow complains. I didn't ask to go from being cooped up in that castle to being cooped up inside a being I don't belong to. We can explore that when we get this mess sorted out, Ethan promises gently. Shadow doesn't reply, its frustration still swirling within him. The suddenness of the emotion makes Electro pause. Is something wrong? He asks under his breath. He feels Shadow swirl inside him, disturbed by his voice. Why? Electro straightens his posture and wipes the sweat off of his brow. All of a sudden you got so annoyed. Ah, Shadow breathes back. I didn't think you'd... Discomfort rises in his gut, one that isn't his own. This feeling is much more cold in nature, detached from his actual body. Electro brushes his hands together to wipe away the dirt that clings to his palms. He was done with his push-ups anyway. It makes him glad to see that the training grounds haven't changed much while he was in his coma. Targets and cloth-stuffed dummies are set up around the square room, the ice-glass ceiling letting in the natural light of the cycle. The gray stone walls box him in, with a doorway leading back outside on one end, and another doorway leading to a battle arena on the other. There are other wizards around as well, some taking breaks on the benches set up at the edges of the room, while others stand around playing with their magic. All in all, though, it's mostly quiet, just like it was in the past. Electro made sure to pick a spot away from the other wizards if ever the need to converse with Shadow arose, much like now. They made it to Frostfall, Shadow reports glumly. You don't make that sound like a good thing, Electro replies, taking a seat on the bench behind him. The frustration is replaced with an aching longing. I want to be there too, Shadow says with a sigh. So do I. But Ethan said I have to watch you, it grumbles. Were you not? I was watching him while you were doing your push-ups. Electro withdraws a stick of arcane gold from his pocket and pops it into his mouth to appear more like he's taking a short break from exercising. Its sweet taste tingles his tongue as his teeth bite into the soft metal stick. He doesn't want you to overexert yourself, Shadow adds. Electro rolls his eyes. He knows he hasn't really supposed to be doing this regular regime right now. Either. If it weren't for Shadow, he might have only been able to handle 1 or 2 push-ups at the most, rather than his usual 50. But at the same time, he doesn't want to sit around in Kimberly's home doing nothing whatsoever, and he's not gotten a whole lot of time to explore Sandra again until now, just to see what might be different from what he remembers. He wants to be hiking up Frostfall right now too, but he's not in that sort of physical condition. Not to mention that whatever happened all those years ago to have made Kelsey leave Sandra behind entirely, he doesn't want to cause her any needless distress either. I hate to agree with him, but he's right, Electra replies. I don't know how much I'll be able to do when I get my Shadow back. You'll be okay, Shadow says. Not physically. Not for a long time. What do you mean? Electro looks down at his thin frame, disappointment and shame swelling in his heart. I wouldn't say my body is in peak condition right now. He used to be so proud with how well he kept himself fit. Now the sight of himself is demoralizing. All that hard work gone to waste. How long will it take for him to regain all the physical strength he lost? Years? Decades? Centuries? I don't get it. Shadow mutters. Look at all those wizards over there, he says, turning his attention to the others in the large room. It's pretty much all guys, mostly pyromancers. Half of them have large biceps that glisten with sweat as their veins bulge from their physical workouts. Those that are practicing with their magic stand strong, immovable as they slowly wave their hands and arms through the air, directing their magic with ease and precision. They've been coming here for years, training their hardest to strengthen their bodies and connect with their magic. And then look at me. Shadow is silent, though Electro can sense its stare through his eyes, a small pinching sensation just behind his pupils. Then his left arm goes numb, and he watches it rise before his face without his command, placed next to one of the toned pyromancers nearby. Compared to the stranger, Electro's arm is thin with barely any muscle on it, let alone fat. The chill of Assandra's air is cold enough to make him shiver if he were to stand outside for any length of time, whereas 18 years ago he was warm enough on his own to where he didn't mind the atmosphere. You're very thin, Shadow finally speaks. Electro lets out a huff and tries his best to play it off as a joke, even as his heart aches with regret. I used to be like them. Toned, physically strong. It'll take a long time to build back my old body. Why? Muscle isn't something that you gain overnight. You have to work for it, putting your body through pain and soreness constantly as you teach it to strengthen itself. But can't you just use... what do you call it again? The magic that changes your hair color. Glamour? Electro hums, twisting the stick of arcane in his mouth. I could, but that's cheating. If I were ever asked to lift something heavy, the use of glamour would be quite apparent. He stands from the bench and turns to leave the training grounds. I'm feeling up for a run. He walks out of the training grounds, passing through the small front lobby as he goes, where a sleepy receptionist snoozed behind their desk. Before them is a small board with a sign-in sheet and quill. It must be nice to work at the training grounds, with what little traffic it usually sees, and a roof over one's head to hide away from the bright light of the cycle outside. He steps outside and breaks into a light jog, trotting down the cobblestone roads of Asandra. The buildings pass him by one by one as he weaves around other beings that travel alone or in small groups of 3s or 4s. The din of conversation hangs over the rooftops, a constant buzzing that never leaves the city, no matter the time. It's comforting to know that not much has changed over the last 18 years. The streets are how he remembers, and so are most of the shops scattered about. The straightway is just as chaotic as it had been, with the constant churn of businesses and rotating storefronts. But once again, his thoughts stray to his 2 old friends. Despite his feelings, he can't help but wonder what they're both doing right now. Did they ever try to save him back then? Have they forgotten about him now? Will he get to see them again? You think about them a lot, Shadow idly comments, though it realizes its mistake as Electro's brow furrows, sending a ripple of unease through Electro's gut. Its cold presence lifts from his mind once more. He didn't even realize it was there. I do. Electro just sighs back quietly. Were you all close? Of course we were, Electro replies, trying to mask his words beneath his breath. Me and Ryan sparred, and Kelsey helped me with my midterm projects. Ryan and Kel like to talk about books, since both of them were history nuts too. Indeed, they made a great trio, despite Ryan's reputation. Electro personally never cared for what Ryan did at school. At least, he didn't care about it all back then. But he's come to regret ignoring the warning signs and rumors, and he took them seriously way too late. It felt like there was something new about Ryan every cycle. Time spent after school in the training grounds waiting for Ryan's arrival, he would hear it all. Blackmail, manipulation, cheating on both tests and girls, and even outright bullying. Ryan made a better illusionist than he did a pyromancer, a comment that he heard too many times to count. But Electro never saw any of it firsthand, so he hadn't believed a word. He even stood up for Ryan more often than not, getting into fights on his behalf. That was right up until Ryan crossed the line. Hard. He could forgive the crazy antics when they were all in school. It's not like Electra was very well behaved back then either. He was always looking for fights, and Ryan practically delivered them to him. For 4 years, 2 immature guys were feeding each other's bad habits. If it weren't for Kelsey, Electra believes that it would have been a struggle to bring himself under control. He thought cutting ties with Ryan was going to be easy, threatening him to stay away and never see the void terror ever again. But oh, how wrong he was. One cannot simply be rid of Ryan like that, he soon found out. And look at what's happened since then. At the very least, even though she also possesses a shard, he hopes that Kelsey has been able to protect herself from him. Chapter 7. The 4 wizards continue their trek up the mountain in relative silence, the only noise to keep them company being the crunch of snow underneath their feet. Jake almost feels bad for Kimberly and Ethan, who trudge through the snow in her heels and his plain shoes, while Jake and Opal wear boots of their own. Yet Kimberly continues on as if nothing is wrong, and Ethan stares up at the sky aimlessly, seemingly bothered by a million other things. He holds his sword tight in his hand, but keeps it pointed at the ground, letting the tip leave a line in the pristine whiteness next to their boot prints. The farther up the slope they go, the colder it grows, colder than Jake's magic can keep him warm. Opal was right to force them all to wear these puffy jackets. Then again, she's been going up and down this mountain for stars know how long. She might know more about this mountain than even Ethan. "Boulder!" Opal calls from the front, the first word spoken in a long, long time. Sure enough, right in their path ahead sits a snowed-over boulder, a large bulge of gray rock sticking out to the mountain slope. All around it, snow is piled up, creating a steep incline all around its sides. Looking a little farther up reveals even more large, semi-buried boulders. "Stay close to the boulders," Opal advises. "We can use them as shields from the blizzard." The other 3 wizards nod back at their guide. Right, the blizzard. Jake almost forgot about that, with how clear and uneventful the path up until now has been. How much farther will they get before the blizzard appears? The group continues forward carefully, staying as close to the first boulder as they can without needing to crawl up the snow on their hands and knees. Jake uses his sword for extra support, plunging it into the snow and pushing himself up off it every couple of steps. The snow is certainly deep here, enough to nearly reach his hilt if he presses it with too much force. They wind their way up the slope, one long step after the other. One might think that this sort of exercise would keep them somewhat warm in the middle of all this cold, but not this time. Every time Jake raises his leg, he feels his balance pitch, causing him to wobble. Each new step, the cold only sinks into his bones even more, trying to ice them over. Still, he grits his teeth and presses onward. When they pass their 3rd boulder, from the clear sky above falls a flurry of snowflakes that sparkle in the light of the cycle. Jake looks looks up at these little flakes with wide eyes of awe. His heart flutters warmly as he turns to Kimberly and asks, "Kim, are you doing this?" Kimberly turns her head to look at him, her expression that of mild distress. "No." The warmth quickly fades after that. "Looks like it's starting," Opal says to the group. "Stay as close to each other as you can, and don't untie your ropes." Once more, the three of them nod back at her in confirmation. Perfect. Jake shuffles up to Kimberly as best he can, placing his free hand firmly on her shoulder. She might see it as a comforting gesture. However, he uses her as an anchor to keep himself upright. At the next boulder, the snowflakes seem to pick up in frequency, starting to stick to Jake's hair and make his head bristle with their icy cold pinpricks. Not even the internal heat of his magic is enough to melt them as they land. Could it be that these snowflakes are being sustained by magic? Or maybe it's so cold that nothing he can do can affect the falling snow. The sky slowly darkens above them as they trudge onward, the glittering flakes of ice dimming into a blanket of white mist as the wind slowly but surely picks up speed. Jake grits his teeth even more as he pushes himself forward, his grip tightening on Kimberly with each step he takes. Kimberly's head turns each time as she casts him worried glances, but she remains quiet. For now, anyway. The falling flakes of magical glitter quickly turn into a gale of thick, white chunks of snow hurtling themselves at the travelers' faces. They use the new boulders they come upon as windbreaks, providing mild shelter from the intense wind and tiny whirling snowballs. But the cold still lingers in the air, a deathly chill that makes Jake's cheeks and nose sting. He can hardly see anything as his vision slowly blurs. Simply holding onto Kimberly's shoulder isn't helping his balance anymore. He draws himself even closer to Kimberly, wrapping his free arm around her in an awkward half-hug, still using his sword like a makeshift cane. "Jake, are you all right?" Kimberly asks him, her voice muffled in his ear. "Yeah, just a little unsteady," Jake replies. "Well, I can't walk if you're wrapped around me like this." "Sorry." Jake reluctantly lets her go, returning to walking by himself with his sword as his only assistance. Opal eventually leads them to a pair of boulders with a small pathway leading between them, a good spot to get a brief moment of rest in this cold and dreary mess. One by one, they all squeeze into the tight space between the large gray stones. "How are we all doing?" Opal calls over the wind. Ethan is silent, but holds up a thumbs up, his face masked by the brim of his hat. Kimberly, too, gives a thumbs up, before turning to Jake with a troubled frown. "One," Jake mutters, holding up a single finger. He kneels in the snow, his breathing heavy and vision swimming. Kimberly puts a hand on his shoulder to steady him as his upper body sways uncontrollably. "Jake," she says. He shakes his head sharply and tries to put on a brave face. "Just out of breath." And never has he felt this lightheaded before as the cold continues to nip his body. He closes his eyes to try and collect himself, and he's instead hit with a wave of tired relief. The cold becomes a numb blanket as his muscles unwind in an instant, preparing for rest. The snow underneath his heavy body feels so soft. Will the others mind if he laid down for a quick spell? Heavy hands are placed on his back and shake him back and forth, doing little to break him from his stupor. "Jake!" The call sounds so far away, muddled to the point where he doesn't know who said it. All he can hear is the soft whistle of the wind as his mind slowly drifts from reality. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp sting bites his cheek, and his head snaps to the left. Finally, he manages to open his eyes once again, although the blizzard rages on in a blurry mess. Turning back to his friends, he finds Kimberly kneeling at his side, her mouth agape with horror. Ethan's dark figure looms over them with intense determination. "Get yourself together," Ethan barks. "We're halfway there." "Maybe we should go back," Opal suggests behind him, her voice masked by the howling gaze. Ethan shakes his head. "We need to keep going, Opal. This is too important to give up on." He bends down and yanks Jake to his feet, throwing one of Jake's arms over his shoulders. Jake stumbles on unsteady feet, but manages to raise his head just enough to see the path in front of him. Kimberly also stands, brushing the snow off of her clothes and taking Jake's other arm, offering additional support. Opal gives the three wizards a look of confusion and worry, but she doesn't voice any objection. Instead, she turns back around and starts off once more, the other three trudging along as fast as they can. Each step Jake takes makes his legs wobble, and he's only able to remain upright with the help of his friend and his girlfriend. The snow batters his face, some of it landing on his sore cheek and making it flare in pain before melting away. Deep down, he hopes never to experience this level of cold again in his life. "Kim, can you redirect some of the snow?" Ethan asks. "I can try," Kimberly replies. She raises her free hand in a protective motion, her fingers glowing with a soft silver light. Slowly, the snow that attacks the group shoots around them instead, being redirected by unseen wind. It's not a very large bubble of calmness, but it works for now. But even with the snow being redirected around the three of them, the same benefit isn't given to Opal. She continues to trudge on only a few feet beyond them, with only the faintest flash of orange from her snow clothes being visible through the white storm. Every now and then, Ethan's rope goes taut, tugging him forward sharply, causing him to pull back on it to get her to slow down. Sometimes her face appears in the snow, one that's quietly frustrated whenever Jake's vision decides to clear, an eerie sight to behold. It's obvious that she wants to move faster, but if Jake were to try, he'd probably fall face first into the snow and never want to get up again. His mind wanders in and out of lucidity. He doesn't know how or why, if he hallucinated or if he somehow passed out in the middle of walking. But at some point during this last leg of their hike, he thinks he hears the warm laughter of young children and smells of something warm and dusty. Phantom energy pulses through his body, the type of a young boy let loose on the world, running freely wherever he wishes, and his fingers tingle as if they're dipped into something comfortably warm. He wants to look around but can't, finding his head too heavy to carry out his commands. But when he finally manages to break from the spell, when he can bring himself to look up once more, the sensations quickly fade back into the coldness of the blizzard. "How much farther?" Kimberly asks, her voice quivering with cold. As she turns to look at Ethan, Jake can see that her nose and cheeks are as bright red as they can possibly get, and her lips are shivering. Even a cryomancer like her has limits. "I don't know," Ethan replies, his voice deep and small so as to not let the cold wind enter his body. But their worries are dispelled when Opal's voice manages to break through the chaos with an excited, "Just a little farther! We're close now!" Jake sucks a cold breath through his teeth, making them tingle uncomfortably, and his lungs hurt, but he doesn't care. With all his willpower, he forces his body upright and his legs to stiffen, propelling himself and his friends forward. If their destination is just up ahead, it's worth using the last of his strength to get themselves out of the storm faster. Finally, like magic, the three step out of the raging blizzard and into a strange, snowless calm, where the light of the cycle once more shines down upon them, and the only wind that howls is that of the blizzard behind them, a massive wall of thick, gray, swirling snow. Kimberly's hand drops tiredly as she lets out a thankful sigh. no longer needing to hold the snow at bay. Ethan, too, lets a small smile of relief slip across his face. Not too far from the edge of the blizzard is a tall, snow-covered gate, flanked on either side by a sturdy wooden wall. Thin, gray wisps of smoke rise from beyond the gate, a sign of life and warmth, and the rest of their path is lined with small stacks of stones set up as markers, each one waving at them with little lengths of tattered red fabric. With Jake's swimming vision, sometimes these markers appear as little gray lumps in the snow with bright red tongues. The four reach the gate. Kimberly is shivering from head to toe now, a shudder that she sends through Jake and into Ethan on the other side. Ethan is silent, his lips pressed together and his eyes downcast, lost in his own thoughts. Opal bangs on the gate with both her fists. "Who goes there?" a booming voice asks from the wall above them, although from this angle they cannot see what being may be up there. "Espen, is that you?" Opal calls back. "It's Opal. Remember me? I know it's been a while since I visited." "Opal," the voice replies suddenly, sounding surprised. "Friend of Olka and Sister Skyshield." "Yep, that's me. I see you're still a little slow." The being Opal called Espen lets out a snort of irritation. "One cannot be too cautious. I hope your trek wasn't hindered too much by the snow. What beings have you brought with you this time?" "These are friends looking for Sister Skyshield, although they're a little cold right now. Could you ask Olka if she can let them warm up at her cabin?" "I may be slow to recall the face, but not Olka's rage. Did she not throw you out last time?" Opal smiles sheepishly up at the sky. "That was a decade ago. Surely she'd have forgiven me by now. Or maybe the sister is free for them to use her cabin instead." "Sister Skyshield is down in the mines right now, so her cabin is empty," Espen replies. "I will talk to Olka, and if Olka refuses, then I will have to turn you and your friends away for this cycle." Heavy footsteps follow the voice's final verdict as Espen descends from the wall. Opal turns to the other three behind her with an apologetic expression. "Sorry, I kind of forgot about that," she admits. "What's going on?" Kimberly asks through her chattering teeth. "In order to get into the village, one of the villagers has to sponsor you," Opal explains. "And last time I might have gotten my sponsor a little angry with me, but I'm sure she'll have forgiven me by now." "And if she hasn't?" Ethan inquires. "Then you three might not be seeing Kelsey this cycle. Or ever, for that matter." "Can't we ask another being to sponsor us?" Opal shakes her head. "If only it were that simple, Eth. The Yafir are stubborn with their traditions." "I can't walk back down like this," Kimberly stutters. Jake wants to nod in agreement, but moving his head even slightly results in a wave of dizziness overtaking him. He doubts he'll be able to make it back down the mountain in this state. Not by foot, and probably not conscious either. A long moment passes as the group, cold and tired, stand huddled together in front of the gate. Then, suddenly, a low groan emanates from the mass of wood as it's pulled slowly backwards, revealing the inside of the walled town. As the crack grows, the group sees two Yafirs staring back at them, one with brown fur covered in glistening white snow and silver armor, and the other wrapped in a long woven cloth of purple and gold. "Stars above, Opal!" the clothed Yafir cries, throwing her paws up in the air. "Why must you always show up with beings in need?" "Sorry, Olka." Opal replies, though her grin doesn't convey her apology very well. Olka shakes her head with a heavy sigh and shuffles forward, staring up at the wizards with a hard scowl as she inspects each one. She gives Opal and Ethan a quick glance, though with the two of them showing no obvious signs of distress, she moves swiftly on to Kimberly and Jake. Her beady black eyes flicker once over Kimberly's shivering form and gives her a single nod. When she turns to Jake, pity gleams in her gaze. "Oh, my poor boy," Olka mutters, reaching out for him. She touches his chest with one of her paws, and a bloom of warmth seeps its way through his puffy jacket and shirt, kissing his cold skin. Jake is able to collect himself, his exhaustion lightening the longer she presses. "Ah," he manages to sigh thankfully. "Come," Olka finally says, lifting her paw and turning away from the group, gesturing for them to follow her. "I have a spare bed and some soup." "Thank you," Kimberly stutters. "Are you sure this is a good idea, Olka?" Espen inquires. "After last time." "I'm aware, Espen. I will be cautious." Stepping through the gate, Opal gives Espen a small wave, but keeps her mouth pressed shut, nervousness in her eyes, with Jake, Kimberly, and Ethan staggering after her. The buildings of the mining town are not nearly as tightly packed together as Varengard. A handful of Yfir are out strolling around, and as the strange group passes them by, they pause to stare. Jake, being half-conscious already, doesn't mind the staring, for all he sees are blurry figures and bright colors in the distance. They are led to Olka's home. As they are led to Olka's home, Jake's attention slips once more, and again, like before in the blizzard, he can hear youthful laughter and phantom warmth spread across his body. His legs begin to ache as if he had been running. A distant voice calls out to him, the noise echoing in his ears. The white-gray of the snow-covered cobblestone street takes on an orange hue as his head hangs and vision swims, becoming grainy. His legs beg for rest as he heaves in and out, trying to catch his breath. He didn't even realize that he was breathless to begin with, or maybe it's all in his head. At this point, it's hard for him to tell. Something dry and scratchy tickles his nose. He feels pressure on his body pushing him downward, and he finds himself lying on top of an orange mound. "It's okay," a childlike voice whispers. "You can rest now." With a heavy sigh of relief, his eyes finally close, bringing Jake into a world of darkness. Kimberly huddles next to the hearth, holding the bowl of rice? Soup. As close to her as possible. Sorry, I have rice on the brain apparently. Excuse me. Kimberly huddles next to the hearth, holding the bowl of soup as close to her as possible, letting... Why did I say rice? Sorry, brief time out. Why did I say rice? Classic rice soup. I don't think rice can grow in Gardal. It's too cold. Okay. Kimberly huddles next to the hearth, holding the bowl of soup as close to her as possible, letting the steam paint her face as she breathes in its delicious aroma. Never has she felt this cold before, and part of her hopes never to feel this way again. Whatever magic they encountered on their hike, she's lucky that she wasn't as severely affected as Jake. She lifts her head to look across the large room to where her boyfriend lies. His shoulder pads, jacket, rope, and boots have been removed. His body now wrapped in a large blanket, with only his head remaining visible as he rests atop a leather cot. His lips were starting to turn blue by the time they got to Olka's home. Ethan stands over Jake, one hand with the pyromancer's forehead and his face full of concentration. Behind Kimberly, in a small cooking area, Olka is preparing more bowls of soup to be fed. Sorry, the rice is getting me. I feel like at this rate it should just be rice and not soup. But that's not how it was written. Behind Kimberly, in a small cooking area, Olka is preparing more bowls of soup to be passed out to the wizards who are still awake. The roof is held up by 4 massive wooden pillars, where the smoke of the central hearth escapes somewhere above, with each space separated by rugs, fabrics, or carved wooden dividers. The wooden floor is covered in hand-woven carpet, with most of the remaining decor and furniture made from painted wood and sculpted metal. Each item is its own masterpiece, no two things alike in any way besides their usage. Do you want a bowl, Ethan? Opal calls, as she holds one in her hand. No, he replies flatly, his gaze fixed on the slumbering Jake. But Eth, Opal starts, only to be interrupted by Olka shaking her head back at the mountain guide. Go warm yourself, Opal, Theophir hums, nudging Opal towards the hearth. With a reluctant sigh, the enchanter plops down on one of the cushions next to Kimberly. How is he? Kimberly asks. Resting, is the reply from the distant spiritist. He got extremely cold. Kimberly takes a sip of soup, which tastes mostly of warm water with just a hint of spice to it. Mysterious food bits stir in the broth, but Kimberly isn't in the sort of mood to ask what it all might be. Poor Jake. He's been through so much already. Her gaze darts to Opal next to her, and notes that it doesn't seem like she's touched her soup at all since sitting down, her gaze to her lap and her lips pressed tightly together. Tension hangs in the air, somewhat distant, but still present. Olka wanders over to the hearth as well, and folds her furry arms, her eyes reflecting the red flames before her. After a tense moment, she finally turns to Opal. Well now, Theophir says. I never thought to see you here again. Yeah, Opal replies nonchalantly. Why have you returned? The mountain guide nods towards Kimberly. Apparently, she's the daughter of Sister Skyshield, and they asked me to bring them up here to meet her. Olka's lips part just enough to flash her fangs. Then I'm willing to let stay. However, unless you have something to say for yourself, Shard Hunter, I'd rather you leave once your meal is over. I know. Kimberly frowns, despite feeling rocked to her core by Olka's sharp demand. Shard Hunter? Opal? No. Is this why Olka is so frustrated by her mere presence? Does she know that the shard is in Kelsey's possession? And here the enchanter sits, completely unconcerned by the beings around her. Indifferent. Olka inhales, turning her gaze to Kimberly. Sister Sky Shield is in the mines this cycle, and she won't be back until nightfall. I'm willing to allow you 3 to stay until then. We don't have that sort of time, Kimberly replies in a heartbeat. Can we go see her in the mines? The mines are strictly off limits to guests. Olka responds. But Olka raises her paw to silence the cryomancer. I do not write the rules, child. You're better off waiting for her to return. What if I went with her? Ethan pipes up. It applies to you as well, the Ophir sighs. But Ethan isn't unfazed by the answer. He steps away from Jake's cot and approaches Olka, motioning to her that he wished to whisper something in her ear. It doesn't take long for Ethan to change Olka's entire demeanor. Her fur bristles as her eyes widen with shock. No doubt Ethan played his ace. It's one thing for him to break the rules as any ordinary being foreign to the island. It's another thing if he were a fragment shadow. The news of Ethan's existence must be much more slow-spreading beyond Cassandra, contrary to Kimberly's first assumptions. Impossible, Olka breathes at last as he pulls away from her. I'll even swear to Kimberly's safety, Ethan adds. She's already here under my name. Olka stares at the husk in silence, her eyes now drinking in his presence before her, as he gazes back with determination etched onto his face. If him being a fragment shadow doesn't get them into the mines, then their trip here might as well have been for naught. Finally, the Ophir nods. I can bring you two to the entrance, but it's up to the guards to grant you entry. But only you two. She shoots a glare in Opal's direction, who continues to eat her soup silently. Don't worry about your friend over there. I've cared for beings in far worse conditions before. He should be ready to travel back down Frostfall by the time you return. Quickly setting her soup bowl to one side, Kimberly springs to her feet, her heart fluttering with renewed hope. Thank you. The Ophir casts Kimberly a slightly skeptical glance. Are you sure you want to leave right now? Yes, Kimberly nods back. Yes, please. Her eagerness puts a rare smile onto Ethan's face, as he only nods in agreement with her sentiments. The sooner we can speak with Kelsey, the better. Chapter 8. It's odd traversing the vast mirage desert on a swirling mass of vines, but since Amber's not a creationist, she can't make a sandboard, and if she can't make a sandboard, then the vines are a lot better than walking. Even though the sun isn't at its peak yet, Blaze's brow is red and covered in sweat, despite the rush of cool air battering their bodies as he stands and directs the mass of plant matter. Maybe it's because of his magic use. Amber doesn't really know. She also doesn't know why Ethan had asked him to come along with her. Why would a naturist need a reason to get out? Why him, of all beings? From where she sits, she looks out at the ocean of sand all around her. Everything looks the same. It makes her scared that they're going in the wrong direction. At this speed, they can afford to get a little lost, but if they don't find town soon, they could be stranded on Mirage for longer than either of them would like to be here for. So, what's going on? Blaze asks over the rush of the wind and the rumble of the vines. Ethan didn't tell you? Amber replies somewhat brashly. No, Blaze answers. Amber lets out a long sigh. All you need to know is that we're looking for a being called Ryan Ashblade. All right. She can feel a heated stare land on the back of her head. As far as she's concerned, he doesn't need the full story. He wasn't there this time. Besides, him accompanying her on this short journey, he is not involved in the situation at all. Then again, neither is she if she really thinks about it. The two continue in tense silence a little longer before the vines start to slow. There's something ahead, Blaze announces. Bit by bit, the two of them are slowly lowered to the ground, the green vines retreating back into the desert sand. The naturist lets out a thankful sigh as he wipes his brow with his arm, and the healer gets to her feet. The grains of sand begin to seep into her shoes as they sink into the dune. She rubs them between her toes, both a comforting and irritating sensation. Out of the corner of her eye, she sees Blaze begin to scale the dune. Not wanting to be left behind, she follows after him. When they reach its crest, she finally sees what he was talking about. Below them is the flat plain of sand that rings the little town of the Cerberus, from which they never venture. Or at least that's the rule. But there's no guarantee that Lucre will be in the town. Being the Crown Prince of Mirage, he'd most likely be at the palace, wherever that may be, and they'll need to figure out how to get there if that's the case. It appears like something else is going on this cycle, and that mysterious something is what makes her hesitant to start the trek across to the collection of small sandstone buildings. There's a scattering of Cerberus across the flat plain, waving their arms in the air to create and maintain strange patterns with the sand. Two stand near a collection of smaller dunes, little bumps in the sand that rise and fall as if the land itself were breathing. 6 raise the orange-yellow grains into a giant U shape. Another 3 farther down have cleared space for a pit, with the only way to pass the pit, aside from simply going around it, being a thin pathway cutting through its center. On and on these strange constructions stretch. "This is the town, right?" Blaze asks. "It is," Amber replies in an amazed mutter. "Well then, let's get going." He starts to stand up, but Amber is quick to grab his wrist and pull him back down. Hey!" "Shh," she replies. We technically shouldn't be here. Stars only know what's going to happen to us if we're seen." "And you're telling me this now?" he hisses. "Well, I wasn't expecting this," Amber replies, gesturing to the station Cerberus below. "What are they even doing?" "I don't know." "Didn't you stay on Mirage for a couple of cycles?" "That doesn't make me an expert on the Cerberus," Amber replies with a very exaggerated eye roll. Blaze lets out an incoherent grumble in response. The atmosphere is silent, yet electrified with excitement and anticipation. But what are they anticipating? What are they supposed to be excited for? How long will she and Blaze be stuck hiding on this dune for until the Cerberus return to their homes? Then, without warning, a large cloud of sand rises up over the town on its far side, almost directly opposite where the wizards lay in the warm dune, among with distant cheers. Emerging from behind the town is a collection of sandboard-riding Cerberus, all of them appearing to be about the same age, if not slightly older, than Amber herself. As the group comes upon the different sandy constructions that ring the town, it finally dawns on her what's going on. It's a race! The racers reach the breathing bumps. Some struggle to follow the flow of the sand, being flung high into the air as the hills rise beneath them, or stall out as the hills sink into deep ditches. But even those keeping up with the rises and falls are having difficulty maintaining their speed with each shift in the terrain. How any of them are able to remain upright on their boards is a complete mystery. One Cerberus stands out from the rest, however. Emerald eyes wide with eagerness and energy, Lucre weaves in and out of his fellow racers with exceptional skill, coming out the other side of the rather interesting obstacle among the top 5 racers. Though Amber notes the absence of his white sash, the one he had been wearing when they first met. If he hadn't been wearing similar, if not practically the same, clothes, she might have mistook him for just another Cerberus having fun. The racers come around the bend, passing the dune where Amber and Blaze are perched, heading to the next obstacle in their way. Acting on impulse, Amber begins to shimmy back down the dune. Hey, where are you going?" Blaze exclaims. "I'm going to follow them," Amber replies, already bouncing on her toes. If Lucre's racing, she wants to try and find the finish line. Granted, she'll probably make it there long after the race is over, but she doesn't care. Running through the sand is insanely difficult as the grains attempt to suck Amber into their warm, rough embrace. Each lift of her leg takes considerably more effort with each step. Behind her, she hears Blaze release a heavy sigh, and in an instant she's swept off her feet by yet another mass of shifting vines. They wrap around her waist and arms, shifting in and out of the weave as she's lifted into the air and across the desert once more. "You could have just asked," Blaze grumbles next to her, sweat returning to his brow. But his attention is trained on the racecourse as he guides the two of them around the plain of sand. Craning her neck, Amber can make out the heads of the racing Cerberus lagging behind as they duck and weave through a forest of orange pillars, then make their way around tight bends. But they quickly leave these Cerberus behind as they come upon the middle group of racers, as they try all they can to catch up to those far, far ahead. Much to her joy, Lucre isn't part of this crowd. "Can't you make us go any faster?" Amber inquires. "At the rate they're going, they won't make it to the other end of the plain before the race is over. If they don't catch Lucre now, stars only know how much longer it'll take for them to get to him. That, and she really wants to see who will win." Blaze scowls at her question, though more out of concern than thoughtfulness. He doesn't seem to like the idea of going faster very much. "Fine," he eventually growls, and with that single utterance, Amber feels a lurch in her stomach as the wind's howl in her ears increases. The naturist turns back to the race once more, but not before Amber is able to catch a hint of strain flash across his face. Her worry lingers for but a brief moment. How could it not? Despite her disdain towards him, she's still a healer, and she doesn't want to cause any being more pain than they need. But this is also Blaze she's talking about. He can take care of himself. Finally, they reach the leading group of racers, each one vying for first place with determination and aggressiveness. Their eyes are locked on the race course and whatever opponent is ahead of them. Although, out of all of them, only Lucre is beaming from ear to ear. She suppresses the urge to call out to him. As much as she wants to cheer him on, she doesn't want to distract him from the race. Honestly, the surprise of her even being here might as well be enough to make him fall off his board if she makes so much as a peep. So she bites her tongue and lets her enthusiasm boil in her gut. This is exactly what she wanted to feel again. And not necessarily the enthusiasm, but the thrill. With Riona, the thrill didn't come until the very end of the adventure. When she and Lucre burst from the bowels of the castle, her heart leaps as she thinks back to that moment. How exciting it all finally felt, how her body shook with adrenaline as she fended off the darkness, how her magic flowed as Lucre drew upon it for the last hurrah. It had been so tense. If he had missed, or somehow his magic didn't pierce Riona's dark veil, and then it all would have been over. Right now, she can feel that very same tenseness, albeit to a smaller degree from life or death, as she merely spectates such a tight race between Lucre and the other 4 competitors alongside him. They jump and swerve in a delicate passing game, each racer having their brief taste of being in the lead. These 5 are certainly in their element as they pass each new obstacle with so much grace that Amber can't even tell if there are any obstacles in their way. Their heads each bounce up and down over the dunes that separate them from the 2 wizards on the other side as they leap into the air. Each time, Amber's heart jumps into her throat. When it's Lucre, she wonders, hopes, that he'll notice them. When it's the other racers, she worries about being seen. Cheers in the distance slowly grow the farther they travel. They must be nearing the finish line. The closer they draw, the lower the vines start to hang. Amber's shoes skim the sands as her speed slows, as she comes to a stumbling halt as the vines eventually release her from their grasp. "Go on," Blaze grunts. Amber turns to see him staggering forward unsteadily, his face bright red and shimmering. His chest puffs in and out with his heavy breaths. One hand is shoved into the nearby dune in an effort to support himself, the other across his chest and glowing with green energy. He's injured? How? Amber can't help but wonder. Her eyes and thoughts don't linger on Blaze for very long, though, as her excitement wells up once more, distracting her. She works her way across the sand as fast as she can, getting ever closer to the dull chatter of the crowd. It's hard to tell how close she is to the gathering of Cerberus with how little they converse. With a small sigh, she picks a dune to climb and crawls her way up its side. Poking her head over its crest, she sees the Cerberus surround the young racers. Even though they're all beaming as wide as can be, it's almost unnerving how their mouths hardly ever move as they celebrate. The winner of the race has been lifted up into the air by massive hands, being taken away from the finish line and deeper into the town in celebration. But she still spots Lucre nearby, surrounded by a small gathering of his own, being patted on his back as he converses with the adults and some of his fellow racers. She was expecting him to look a little more frustrated. He was in the leading group the entire race. No doubt he must have been close to coming in first, right? Maybe he came in second or third instead? She can't wait to ask him. So entranced by the Cerberus, and especially Lucre, it doesn't register to her that she can still be seen from where she observes. That is, until she notices one of the Cerberus raise a hand, gesturing quite clearly in her direction, their eyes wide with surprise. Heads quickly turn as Amber's heart squeezes with fear, and she promptly dips below the dune once more. They must have noticed her bright pink hair. On the other side of the dune, a small commotion begins to rise from the gathering of townsfolk. She looks around for Blaze, but he's nowhere to be seen. How far away is he? How much longer will it take him to recover from whatever he's recovering from? If a fight were to break out, she doesn't have the magic to defend herself. That is, if things escalate to that point. Amber? The sound of her name makes her jump with a panicked shriek, falling from the dune slope and landing in the trough below. Lucre is staring at her from the dune's peak, both bewilderment and relief clearly written across his face. The two stare at each other in silence. Hi. Amber manages to breathe through her shock, her heart still beating as fast as it possibly can. Lucre's mouth hangs open, his lips forming soundless shapes as he struggles to find his words. Well? A shout from below calls. In an instant, Lucre spins around and assures the crowd with clear enunciation, "It's okay. It's just a friend." Amber picks herself up from the sand as Lucre crosses the dune's crest and dashes down to her with a wide smile. "Sorry," she says with a thin smile. "Some race that was, huh?" "You saw?" Lucre breathes. "A little. What place did you finish in?" The young prince beams with pride as he announces to her, "Fourth." "Fourth?" She echoes in disbelief. How on ASTRIA did he come in fourth place? He deserves to be in the top 3. Lucre nods. "Fourth is really good for me. I was expecting to be 6th. "But you practice, don't you?" "Not like them," he replies, shaking his head disappointedly. "This is my first race." "Oh." Amber still smiles and claps her hands together, golden sparkles bursting from her fingers with joy. If he's happy with how he finished, then she's happy for him too. "Well, congratulations." "Thank you," Lucre beams, but his smile quickly turns to a confused frown. "Why are you here?" "We need your help with something," Amber replies. "I could explain everything on the—" "I can't," Lucre interrupts her. As much as he appears excited for another adventure with his wizard friend, he shakes his head with reluctance. "I'm—" "Lucre, get away from that wizard this instant!" A sharp demand rings out from the dune above. The gold circlet sitting atop the Cerberus's head makes Amber's breath catch in her throat, though the lavish white dress, long green fabric draped over her arms and chest, and the water pellet embroidered belt strongly confirms the Cerberus's identity. She didn't notice that the Queen of Mirage was present at the race as well. Flanking the queen are 8 guards, 4 on each side. 4 have bows drawn, with the others brandishing long silver spears. "Sorry," Lucre mutters as he slowly steps away from Amber, though he keeps his back to his mother as he walks halfway up the dune. "I won't let you steal my son away for a second time," the queen says to Amber, her eyes ablaze with rage. Amber is completely at a loss for words. Ethan dealt with the queen the last time she appeared, though they also benefited from facing her from behind a sturdy metal gate. Amber, however, doesn't have the sort of courage Ethan does. With nothing standing between her and the angry queen's guards, she switches into survival mode. Behind the guards, other Cerberus peer over the dune to see what's going on, their curiosity piqued. The pressure is mounting for some being to do something. Slowly, Amber raises her hands and takes a cautious step backwards. "I'm not here to cause any harm." "Liar!" the queen hisses. She raises a hand and orders, "Arrest her!" 2 of the spear-holding guards start forward. And in her panic, Amber summons her own spear in a flurry of golden glitter, pointing it right back at them. It's nice to have a weapon of her own for situations such as this, even though she has hardly ever swung a sword in her life, let alone learned how to properly handle a spear. It's the same one she took to Corridon. Lucre let her keep it. The only advice she can currently recall him giving her is that spear's stab. The sudden appearance of her weapon makes the approaching guards hesitate momentarily, but upon sensing that she only summoned it out of fear, they continue their advance. "Mom, she's not..." Lucre tries to argue, but he's quickly shut down by the queen, saying, "This is the last race I will ever agree to take you to, Lucre. Not even our town is safe from their presence." "Mom!" Lucre exclaims to no avail. "Escort him back to the palace," the queen orders one of the archers. They nod and starts towards the prince as Amber continues to back away, waving her spear in a poor attempt to ward off her oncoming adversaries. "Where are you, Blaze?" she thinks in desperation. No wonder Ethan wanted him to come along with her. That husk knows more than any being on Astria that she can't fight. She survived Corridon entirely on her apparent harmlessness and reliance on the others there with her for protection. Suddenly, the sand beneath Amber's feet begins to tremble and shift. The roar of the quaking desert fills her ears as she falls backwards onto the dune behind her. Bright green tentacles burst from below, wrapping themselves around the 2 guards near Amber and the 1 archer charged with escorting Lucre away from the scene, lifting them up into the air and trapping their weapons by their sides. The other Cerberus spectating the scene, Lucre and even the queen herself stare at the vines in utter disbelief as the guards struggle against their bindings. "Can't leave you alone now, can I?" Blaze sighs, approaching the chaos he just created. Amber can only stare back at him with a wide-eyed stare, still rattled by all that's going on. She is relieved that he's finally here. The naturist takes one look around at the gathered beings and says to the queen, "We need to borrow your son." "No!" the queen sputters, still in shock. She lifts her hand, and in a gust of sand, a long jade staff appears in her grip. Anger returns to her eyes as she asserts, "You wizards are not welcome here on Mirage or anywhere near my son. Release my guards and remove yourselves from this island at once." "Look," Blaze says, his voice calm and level with only a hint of mild irritation to it. "I think we got off on the wrong foot here. We're not leaving without Luke." "Lucre," Amber quietly corrects him. "Whatever," Blaze sighs. "I don't know what we need him for, but it'll only be for a little while and then you can have him right back. We're not stealing him, we just need his help." He waves his hand, and the 3 entrapped guards are lowered back down to the desert sand and released. Stunned, they look to the queen for further orders. "Contrary to what you might think, I'm not one for violence," Blaze adds. But if my hand is forced, I will not hesitate to defend myself and Amber here. The queen remains stiff atop the dune, though the fire in her eyes dulls ever so slightly. In a cold voice, she says, "You wizards think you can do as you please. Lucre is forbidden from leaving this island just like any other Cerberus here." "But Mirage is still a part of Astria," Amber speaks up. She picks herself up from the sand and cautiously stands behind Blaze, holding her spear close to her chest. Taking a deep breath, she continues, "Lucre helped save Astria last time. If he wasn't there, we probably wouldn't have succeeded. Those dark clouds are gone, right? And the attacks on the palace have also stopped too. That was all because of him." "Well, it was mostly because of him. He landed the final blow on Riona. Whether or not her death caused those clouds to disappear, or if it had been Shadow reclaiming its magic, she can't say for sure." "We need his help again," she adds, "or else Mirage will be facing a force that none of you will be able to stop." "That bad?" Lucre asks. "What sort of force?" the queen inquires sternly. Blaze's gaze shifts to Amber as well, that very same question glowing in his eyes. Amber isn't sure if she should say it in front of all of the other Cerberus that are spectating from behind the queen, their curious faces having grown in number while they have been conversing. Are they even understanding what they're saying in the first place? Will she be putting them all in danger if she announces their intentions aloud? They're all waiting for her to speak. Maybe she should just say it. "A force that's trying to find the shards to the font of magic," she reveals. "What?" Blaze is the first one to react with a cry of outrage, blowing out Amber's left ear with his shout. "Stars above, Amber! The font of magic is much more important for me to know than whatever being this Ryan guy is. You—" Lacking the words to convey the rest of his thoughts, the ground trembles beneath her as his eyes blaze with rage. He looks about ready to tear Amber apart with his own two hands. Above, the queen issues another order to her guards. "Disperse these Cerberus." They set to work in an instant as the queen makes her way down the dune, gesturing to her son to join her. Hesitantly, Lucre staggers back over to the wizards and his mother. The air has grown dreadfully serious as Amber now stands face to face with the stern Queen of Mirage. Blaze folds his arms and silently seethes, not helping to ease the tense atmosphere. Lucre stands awkwardly off to one side, still taken aback by the speed that everything is moving at. Amber doesn't blame him. She, too, is struggling to think straight under the queen's sharp gaze. "You mentioned a being called Ryan," the queen states, her eyes briefly shifting to Blaze. "What is his last name?" "Ashblade," Amber answers honestly. The queen lets out a sad yet frustrated sigh. "I thought I'd never hear that being's name again." "You know him?" Blaze inquires. His voice is still stiff with anger, but he does his best not to sound like it's directed at the royal. "Mom?" Lucre only breathes in confusion. "Why are you looking for Ryan?" the queen asks Amber, leaning forward with intense interest. "Leave no detail out." Amber nods timidly. "Well, we're not really looking for him to reunite the shards, but there is a being that is, and if that being is successful, then the spirits only know what will happen next. So we're trying to find him, warn him, protect him, and keep his shards safe. But we don't know where Ryan is right now. We know where he found his shards, so the hope is that if we retrace his footsteps, we'll figure out where on Astria he's hiding. And in order to do that, we need Lucre." "You speak of the Pyramid of Solari," the queen says. Her gaze grows distant as she takes herself back in time. "Ryan brought me there many years ago. Yes, the shard was housed within it, in a place only royals are allowed to enter. If you are indeed looking for his current location, you will find your answer there. I was a fool to give it to him. If you do find him and are able to, I request that you return the shard to its rightful place within the pyramid. That thief doesn't not deserve to have it, let alone protect it. Lucre looks at his mother with surprise. You knew a wizard? The queen doesn't regard him, her stiff frown contorting into the look of deep shame. My son, I know you already feel betrayed by the knowledge of kings. I am as well. I never knew either. But I have every reason to hate the wizards as strongly as I do. My parents warned me just like I have tried warning you. The queen finally turns and places a hand on her son's shoulders. Ryan Ashblade is nothing but a liar and a cheat. A stranger that will use you for his own ends. Do not be surprised if these wizards turn out to be just as evil as him. You're letting me go? Lucre breathes. I am. The queen nods reluctantly. You've gone with this one before, and you came back safe. But beware the others. Cerberus and wizards. Her thoughts trails off as she shakes her head. No, Lucre replies. Still, he gives her a hug and a smile. I'll be back soon. Ancestors guard you, the queen replies, awkwardly returning his embrace with a single stiff arm. Her gaze once more strays to Amber, her eyes full of skepticism. She doesn't blame the queen. Yes, Lucre ran away with Amber once, and he returned to Mirage in full health. The queen is entrusting her son to Amber once more. It's a big risk, but knowing full well what's at stake if she refuses to let him go, the safety of her island and ASTRIA at large, Amber should be grateful that the queen is at least somewhat willing to let Lucre leave this time. The queen lets Lucre go and warns the two wizards. I will not hesitate to go to war if anything happens to my son. He's in good hands, Blaze attempts to reassure the royal, but he's only answered with a cold glare. Still, he looks up at the sky and hums, We've wasted enough time. Let's get going. Chapter 9. Kimberly is quietly bundled up in her new snow jacket at Ethan's side as the two follow Olka through the town. He opted to leave his jacket behind, and thank the stars! He rolls his shoulders, happy to be free of that puffy nuisance. However, it only brings his attention to the weight of his new cape, one that hangs from his body just as heavily. Also, he's feeling much better now that he's away from Opal once more. He thought that 5 centuries would have done something to help her change her old habits, but this entire trip only disproves that assumption. There's clearly a lot of history between Opal and Olka, but he doesn't want to inquire. Her business is her own now. He's not here to solve any of her problems. Not this time. Even so, somewhere in his cold, hollow shell, he still feels a strange warmth whenever he catches her fleeting stares. He doesn't quite know what to think about it. It's a pleasant feeling, one he doesn't want to let go of, but it's smothered by this weight of dread that he shouldn't be feeling it at all, at least not when she's around. He places a hand on his chest, trying to make sense of himself. He never remembered his emotions being so complicated before. Are you okay? Kimberly asks suddenly, catching Ethan off guard. He turns his head just enough to glance at her. He should probably be the one asking her that question. He has never seen her look so pale. When you and Jake are together, Ethan speaks, tilting his head to hide his face from her. What is it that you feel? Kimberly is quiet, her eyes turning away from the husk as she contemplates his question. Now added to this dreadful warmth is the knotted swirl of anticipation. It's not helping him feel any better. Contentment, she finally replies, and love. What do those feel like? A small puff of air leaves Kimberly's mouth. He doesn't really know what to make of that sort of response. What do you mean? She finally inquires. Physically, what do they feel like? Ethan repeats. Why are you asking? Another glow of warmth blooms in his chest. But it's different this time. A tiny ember that flickers with fleeting bursts of warmth. It's comforting. For a brief moment. It's Opal, he replies, speaking her name with a heavy voice, devoid of emotion. The ember within him peters out once more, chased away by her presence on his mind. What about her? Kimberly presses. Ethan lets out a heavy sigh, his breath dripping with magic. He lets it buzz against his lips as he gathers himself. So much comes to mind all at once. So many cycles spent shopping, partying, staying out until first light. He didn't mind skipping classes just to be out and about with her. Being with her, he felt that warmth that he had been so desperate for ever since Riona put him in chains. But... well... he begins, finally raising his head. Thoughts and memories swirl within him, but he doesn't have time to get lost in them now. They're nearing the entrance to the mines, a guarded tunnel cut into the snowy rock of the mountain. He shakes his head. Maybe later. We're almost there. He catches Kimberly pulling a mildly disappointed yet concerned frown before she, too, turns to the task in hand. Halt! One of the Yfir demands as they near, holding up a paw. From under their helmets, their beady eyes regard Olka coldly. Olka, why do you bring guests here? You know the rules. I know, Olka replies, gesturing to Ethan. But they are here at the request of a fragment shadow. Who am I to deny the divine? The two guards turn to Ethan in an instant. He can feel their skepticism in the tense silence. He doesn't blame them. He still doesn't quite like being addressed as a fragment shadow either. But this is the only way they're going to be able to see Kelsey. He steps forward. My apologies for all this chaos, but my business is urgent. I have a message to pass on to Kelsey Skyshield. What is it then? The second guard asks gruffly. It's clear they don't want to be dealing with some being claiming to be a fragment shadow. Surely that sort of thing isn't a common occurrence here, is it? I'll deliver it for you. Ethan shakes his head firmly. I must deliver it myself. No entry. The second guard promptly states, slamming the butt of their pike on the ground. The first guard nods in agreement. Ethan can't keep back a dark glower. Even without Shadow's presence, the long figures of the houses darken and tremble, elongating across the snowy ground. Perhaps he should rip out their shadows and... Kimberly steps forward, hands on her hips. We're not shard hunters, if that's what you're so concerned about. The guards waver at her assertion. Sandshard has brought nothing but trouble to our town, the first guard finally admits, narrowing their eyes. How are we to believe you'll be no different? Ethan stiffens. He had heard Olka mention the shard hunters earlier, but he hadn't made the connection until now. Stars above, has Opal been using them this entire time? No wonder the Yfir are so cautious around her. How about I introduce myself then? Kimberly says. She puts on a grin and starts her spiel. I am Kimberly Starshield, blessed cryomancer and owner of the magic cone on Asandra. And this is Ethan, the fragment shadow that saved Corridon. The guards stare back at the wizards in silence, their eyes darting from one to the other in amazement. They hadn't heard of Kimberly before. Surely they'll know of Corridon's restoration. But Kimberly isn't done just yet. Kelsey's the one in danger here, with or without her shard, she continues. If we took it, we'd only be putting ourselves into her position. But if we told you two what's going on, how can we trust that you'll pass on our warning to her in time? If we explain to you everything that's going on, it might be too late for her. Oh, please let us see her, just this once. The guards huddle close and grumble to each other as Kimberly rolls her shoulders back. As they wait, a dense pit of shame forms in Ethan's hollow chest. He can't help but shake his head, trying to clear it of the darkness that had briefly overtaken him. To even think of doing any more tearings as a way to get what he wants sickens him. Yet it was his first idea. If Shadow were with him, would he have actually done it? Ethan? Kimberly speaks, drawing his attention. Her brow is furrowed with concern as she turns to meet his downcast gaze. Are you all right? Ethan tilts his head to hide his face under the brim of his hat. He can't bear to see her staring at him like that. She must have sensed it too. Maybe, he answers in a quiet mutter. He doesn't quite know himself. Eventually, the guards shift, and the wizards refocus their attention to the situation at hand. The guards return to their posts on either side of the mine's entrance, standing as straight as they do when the wizards first arrive. The first guard clears their throat. Go on, make it quick. They gesture to the open tunnel with their spear. Kimberly almost jumps as she starts forward. Speechless, Ethan can only drift after her like a shadow, not even giving the guards another look. The tunnel slopes almost immediately, and it's quite a steep drop at that. White marks from Yafir claws digging into the ice and rock paint the ground. Kimberly takes a few uneasy steps down before she starts to slip. A sigh escapes Ethan's mouth, the buzz of magic tickling his lips, and he lets his feet leave the ground behind. He offers Kimberly a hand as he says, I can fly us down. Thanks. Kimberly nods back, taking hold of his arms. She wraps him in a hug as she plants her toes on top of his shoes, using him as a platform. He'd appreciate it more if he wasn't in such a state. Slowly, smoothly, he brings the two of them down the entrance shaft. The crisp, wintry air of the mountain turns stale and stuffy the farther they descend, and the distant ringing of swinging pickaxes fill the air with their melody. The tunnel itself crackles with burning wood, torches illuminating the mountain's bowels with ease. As they go, Ethan can feel a soft beating against his chest. It's a warm, rhythmic drumming he can't quite place. Though it's weak and distant right now, its intensity is slowly growing the farther into the tunnel they float. Kimberly's arms tighten around his neck as she hangs on. I'm worried, Eth, she states in his ear. What if we get there and... She trails off, her grip tightening even more. Her frosty breath leaves behind cold vapor that batters the side of his face, making it prickle uncomfortably. He raises a hand to give her a reassuring pat on her back, but hesitates. He can feel her shadow waver beneath his fingers, even without touching her. It's too late to turn back now, he says, lowering his hand. I know, she replies. She leans back, her face popping into view, pale as can be with a worry-sickened gaze staring back at him. You didn't finish your thought earlier. About Opal. Ethan's lips stiffen, bubbles of anger rising inside him. That doesn't matter anymore. She hasn't changed. His harsh reply takes Kimberly aback, her eyes widening with shock. She used us, he adds, a hint of disbelief in his voice. Somehow he thought that, maybe, after all this time, she would have changed. She remembered him, held on to their relationship, spent all this time hoping he'd return. It even got him wondering, was that all just an act? He shakes his head, mindful of how close the brim of his hat is to Kimberly's face, and furrows his brow. Why did I think she would be different? Why did I feel... He moves his lips silently, trying to find the word to fit the emotion always just out of his reach. He sighs in defeat, shoulders sagging. Nothing comes to mind. But all his doubts are gone now. The thing he was so conflicted over, solved in a few words. Opal is not a being they can trust anymore. She probably doesn't even care about getting back with him at this point. He's just her latest ticket to Kelsey and the Shard. So why should he still care about her? Finally, they reach the bottom of the shaft's entrance. Cautiously, Kimberly steps down from Ethan and onto the small rocky ledge that overlooks the famous mine of Gardal. She shuffles as close to the precarious edge as she is willing to go, staring down into its depth with wide eyes of amazement. Ethan remains close by her side, prepared to catch her if she slips and falls. The two now overlook a deep pit that glitters with minerals of all types and colors, some of them reflecting the light of torches scattered about. Bridges made of stiff planks of wood cross the pit over and over and over, as far as the eye can see downwards, to where they disappear into impenetrable darkness. The melodic ring of pickaxes so grand and echoing that it's nigh impossible to tell where the miners even are, let alone how many there might even be. Some Yafir haul around sacks full to the brim of mined resources back and forth, disappearing into one tunnel, only to appear out of another at random, the sharp claws of their furry feet clacking and scraping across the stone and wood. While Ethan isn't too concerned about falling, the lack of guardrails still worries him. How the Yafir are able to work safely in these conditions, how any wizard looking to help them isn't constantly scared for their life. Wow. Kimberly breathes in awe, her eyes slowly scanning the pit, absorbing as much as she possibly can. Ethan nods in agreement. This is his first time seeing the inside of Frostfall for himself, too. He tries not to get too lost in the grandeur, his gaze turning from the glittering gems to the wooden structures. There doesn't seem to be a direct way up and down, though he is reluctant to use the maze of bridges and tunnels. Going the normal way will take too long. He extends a foot over the side of the ledge. The moment his shoe passes beyond the ledge's threshold, the hands of gravity grab hold to drag it down into the dark depths below. A pit so deep it touches the center of Astria, he recalls reading once. It's a myth that many beings believe in, including the Shard Hunters. Though, unlike the Font of Magic, Frostfall is nowhere close to being that deep. Many are quick to forget that this pit is the result of innumerable years of mining. There will always be a point where no normal being can descend any further. But it's deep enough that Ethan can't feel the bottom. He has no idea when he would, and he's not here to test that thought right now. Once more, he holds out a hand to Kimberly. I'll carry you. Are you sure? She asks. It's the fastest way, he replies. Her hesitation is much more apparent as she stares back down into the darkness below them. The tunnel was one thing. At least there was ground beneath them if anything were to happen. But here, there are only bridges to keep them aloft. Ethan can't fly if there's nothing beneath him. You can wait for me up here if you— No, Kimberly interrupts, reaching out. I'm coming with you. Ethan helps her climb onto his back, her arms wrapped around his neck to where she hangs from him like a second cape. He has to tilt forward to prevent her from accidentally choking him. Ready? He asks. As I'll ever be, Kimberly replies, a slight waver of uncertainty to her voice. Her grip tightens anyway, determined to see this adventure through. Ethan wraps his own hands around her wrists, careful to not accidentally snap her bones as he holds her in place. With his friend secure on his back, he takes off. Through the air, he glides from bridge to bridge as the two descend into the pit, passing Ymir and wizards alike on their way. Shouts of alarm and confusion echo above their heads as they leave these beings quickly behind. It's not long before the rush of the air fills Ethan's ears completely. The farther they spiral, the dimmer it becomes. The small mounted torches become braziers cut deep into the rock, their low flames still burning bright enough to illuminate the space. The minerals embedded into the pit's walls change colors and clusters and frequencies, turning duller and smaller the farther they go. There's no life to be seen around them anymore. Besides them and the wind, it's eerily quiet. Ethan is trying his best to find a balance between speed and comfort, but the farther they spiral, the harder it is for him to push back the blooming warmth in his chest. It feels as though a being is trying to hammer their way out of him, beating against his shell in a rhythmic pattern. Its pace has been quickening steadily, an eagerness that's trying with all its might to make him go faster. But the weight on his back tells him otherwise. Kimberly's struggling to breathe, with short inhales and long exhales that stick to the back of his head. She doesn't speak, but her grip has certainly weakened. If he goes any faster, he might only make her sick, or worse. He knows they're getting closer to Kelsey, bit by bit. He feels it. Eventually, he kicks his feet out under him and brings the two to a gradual stop, landing on an old bridge being eaten away by ice. He releases Kimberly from his grip, who collapses behind him with heavy breathing. It's rather dark down here, the braziers few and far between. One would certainly need a personal light source to be able to see anything properly. Minerals appear quite scarce this deep, the walls of the pit hardly gleaming at all. The tunnel ahead of him is bathed in shadow, with a small orange glow deep within it. The quiet echo of ringing pickaxes managed to reach his ears. Apart from whatever beings are working down there, the two of them are utterly alone. Ethan places a hand on his chest to feel the pounding within him, fast and forceful, filling him with a magical strength so overwhelming he has to focus hard on his breathing to have it not be lost in the storm within. There's no doubt in his mind that they're in the right place. She's down there, he announces, his words filling the void of the pit around them. Really? Kimberly asks between her breaths. Ethan nods back. Thank you for the confirmation, an ethereal voice cackles. A deep chill runs through Ethan as the darkness of the tunnel warps, and two glowing red eyes stare back at him. Electro's shadow grins gleefully at the two wizards as it stands between them and Kelsey. Lightning sparks from its figure, burning the aging bridge wherever it lands. I knew following you would be a good idea. What? It has been following them this entire time? Before Ethan can do anything, it raises a hand, then swings it down towards the bridge. The rope where the structure is tied into the rocky pit is assaulted by a beam of bright, burning light. In an instant, the far end of the bridge goes limp and starts to fall. Ethan whirls around, grabbing Kimberly's arm and propelling the two of them into the dark tunnel behind. Out of the pit, a resounding whoomp fills the air as the wood sharply collides with the rock wall, masking most of the twisted shadow's malicious cackle. It turns and shoots down the tunnel, leaving behind bright bolts in its wake. Kimberly breathes shakily, drawing Ethan's attention. She slowly brings herself to her hands and knees before rolling to the side to sit against the tunnel's cold wall. Her arms and legs are badly scraped. "I'm sorry," Ethan says, kneeling down before her. Thankfully, none of them are that deep despite their looks. He closes his eyes and mutters under his breath, "Spirit of life." The warm thrum in his chest expands, filling his entire shell. The smell of soil wafts up to his nose as he attempts not to squirm uncomfortably. As he cracks his eyes open once more, he sees soft green light glowing around Kimberly's injuries. Ethan can't help but sigh in defeat. I should have been paying more attention. He should have been more cautious. He should have kept a better eye on the darkness around them. He should have expected it to have been watching them, and he didn't. "Don't worry about that now," Kimberly assures him. "What about Kelsey?" The drum in his chest beats more heavily now, filling him with urgency as the last of Kimberly's wounds close. He stands, turning his gaze to the pit. The echo of the collapsed bridge still lingers in the air. The orange light at the other end has been dulled. White flares in the distance. White flares dance in the distant darkness. He looks down, searching the darkness for another bridge he could use to fly to the other side of the pit. To his dismay, none of them are aligned in the way he needs them to be. "Can you make us a bridge?" he asks. "I've never done that before," Kimberly replies as she, too, rises from the ground. She steps to the tunnel's opening, rubbing her hands together anxiously as she stares down at the endless void below. She takes a deep breath and extends her arms sharply, palms pointed towards the opposite opening in the rock. The air cools rapidly as a bright blue streak shoots through the dim darkness, crackling as ice meets air. It starts wide enough where they stand, but it only thins the farther out it stretches. By the time the ice implants itself on the other side, it's smaller than the size of a sewing needle. The ice is hardly thick enough to support the weight of even a single being anyway, though that's only if they were to cross it on foot. "Stay here," Ethan instructs as he lifts off the ground. "What?" Kimberly starts, but by that point, the husk is already off. He shoots through the air across her blue bridge with determination. He must deal with this shadow. He won't let another one of his friends fall to it. The air of the tunnel is electric, making his shell buzz with its energy as the thumping within him grows even louder. His magic is practically itching to be used. "Kelsey, I thought you would be happy to see me," Electro's shadow taunts, followed by a blast of cold air, then the sound of ice shattering in full force. He can see the battle now. The twisted shadow dances in and out of the darkness, its form appearing more liquid than solid, granting him glimpses of the chaos it's causing. A little farther down is a wall of ice, behind which a small group of Yfir cowering in both awe and terror at the scene, their faces lit by burning torches. And standing in front of the ice wall is a wizard that can only be Kelsey's sky shield. A wild and unwinding braid of white hair tumbles down from beneath a faded purple hat. A cape lined with fur is pressed against the back of her warm clothes, a thick sweater and long pants, which are dipped in an array of blue and white dyes characteristic of cryomancers. A glowing wand is gripped in her right hand, a shaft akin to a spike of ice headed by a jagged diamond, and her cold blue eyes are wide with shock. Fire. With a roar, Ethan extends his hands, and from them red flames fill the space. The shadow's dancing ceases the instant the darkness surrounding it fades, and it turns around in surprise to be greeted by the burning light barreling towards it. "Shadow!" he calls as the flames sputter out. Electra's face is gradually revealed, its crimson eyes staring back at him in annoyance. Its forearms have turned to mist from the damage it took. Shadow's presence swirls in the back of Ethan's mind, alerted to the situation at hand. Stay with Electro, Ethan demands harshly. Just give me something. The warm pounding within his chest is quickly overrun by the dense and uncaring chill of Shadow's magic flooding his hollow figure. As darkness returns to the tunnel, he presses his hands together. On either side of the twisted shadow, black walls rush out from the rock, seeking to crush it where it stands. Predictably, the shadow reaches out to try and stop it, only for it to hold back the oncoming force by its upper arms instead of its hands. Now it faces a predicament. If it holds the walls for too long, its forearms will reform inside of them, essentially trapping it where it stands. If it were to release the walls, however, it'll be crushed and return to its body. If it moves backwards, it'll run into Kelsey and Richard. If it moves forward, it'll run into Ethan and likely return to its body anyway, so long as Ethan can grab a hold of it. If it stays, it runs the risk of being killed anyway by Kelsey from behind. Interesting. The shadow chuckles beneath the strain. Kelsey, Ethan calls to the cryomancer. Her form stiffens as she looks up at the husk, a deep-seated horror glowing in her eyes. Still, she grips her wand as tight as she can, leveling it with the monster before her. Her wand flares with blue light as the wall of ice behind her trembles. Long icy needles shoot from around her figure, each one racing to be the first to stab at the twisted shadow. Each one shimmers with the golden light of the torches burning behind Kelsey, light that Ethan hadn't taken into account. The shadow snickers as the dark walls that hold it in place lose form, the light chasing away the darkness Ethan had been using. It leaps forward towards Ethan, the needles right behind it. Ethan braces himself for an attack, only for the twisted shadow's evil grin to melt into what little darkness remains. Ice. Ethan's body reacts before he even has the time to think, raising a wall of his own to block Kelsey's oncoming attack. The needles come to a halt as they embed themselves into his defense. He didn't think he needed to worry about the torches. If Shadow were here, maybe that would have been the case. I just want to have a chat with my wife. The shadow's taunt echoes from the dark. Ethan whirls around to watch it reform farther down the tunnel, away from the wizards and Yafir. Its forearms are fully reformed as it grins with the shadows. Despite how unconvincingly disappointed it sounds, it's savoring the moment of chaos to the fullest. I see that is too much to ask for. Ethan's ready stance wavers as what it said registers in his mind. Wife? The shadow springs forward, taking advantage of Ethan's confusion. Its fist drives itself into his gut, sending him crashing into the ice wall right behind where Kelsey stands. I didn't marry a monster, the cryomancer bites back. The tunnel crackles as a layer of frost shoots itself forward, surrounding the twisted shadow and extending into the dark behind it. Once more, needles rise from the walls and ground around the shadow. However, just as they come near its body, bright bolts of hot lightning leaps forward to shatter their forms with ease. Electra's shadow remains still, smiling back at the distressed wizard with glee. Come now, Kel, the shadow hums, extending a hand towards her. There's no need to fight like this. Just hand it over and... Never, she growls back. Lying dazed next to her, Ethan's chest flares with indescribable heat. Its intensity makes him ache as he slowly rights himself on the ground. The thumping returns in full force, jumping into his head and filling his ears. He grits his teeth in frustration. Why must this strange sensation be so distracting? The shadow chuckles out of amusement. How much more convincing do I need to get? Just as it finishes speaking, it sparks once more, and out of the dim tunnel emerges ice spikes hurtling themselves into the fray. The lightning catches each one and drives them down into the ground. They burst into a flurry of sharp ice and clumps of snow, some of which batter Ethan and Kelsey. "Ah, there you are," the shadow cries with delight. It turns in an instant, lightning licking the walls of the tunnel with enthusiasm. More ice flashes in the dark, and more crashes follow as they are caught by the shadow's magic. Until, eventually, it twists its body into a battle stance. It drives its knee into the assailant's gut before grabbing and flinging a body out into the faint light that manages to reach the two. It takes no time at all for Kimberly to fall to her knees, one of her arms being held behind her back by the cold hand of the twisted shadow. She lets out a cry of surprise as her legs scrape against the hard, rough ground of the tunnel. "A family reunion," it announces eagerly. "What a surprise!" "Kim!" Ethan can't help but cry out, finally finding the strength to rise to his feet. What part of his order did she not understand? Kelsey can only stand helplessly at his side, staring down the tunnel in abject horror. "Look at you," Electro's shadow hums in disappointment. It gives Kimberly's arm a bit more twist, and Kimberly tries to twist along with it, her face morphing into pain. So much power with hardly any training. What a shame. It applies more pressure, making the young wizard gasp through gritted teeth. "Eli," Kelsey breathes. "Your parents hardly raised you at all," the shadow continues, continuing to twist even harder with each word. "Oh, wait. Your mother ran away and your father was a failure. No wonder you turned out this way." "Eli!" Kelsey cries out once more. The shard glows in her hand, mirroring her distress. "Stop it!" "If you want me to stop," it says, its bloodthirsty eyes flickering up to meet Kelsey's horrified face. "You know what you have to do." It raises its boot slowly into the air, aiming it at the young wizard's outstretched arm. "Don't," Ethan warns. His mind races to try and find a solution. There has to be a way to save Kimberly without giving up the shard. "Stop." The shadow's head rises, boot poised and ready to strike. Kelsey steps forward and tosses the shard towards the shadow, and Ethan watches in horror as it clatters to the ground. The twisted shadow smile widens as it stares at its prize triumphantly. It starts towards the shard, keeping Kimberly tight in its grasp as a shield. "No!" Ethan starts forward, rage swirling in his chest, only for Kelsey to extend an arm to block him. "What are you?" he starts, meeting her forlorn gaze. "He honors his word," she says. It almost physically hurts to stand by and watch as the twisted shadow approaches the wand, softly glowing between the two parties. The drum inside his shell pounds, fighting for release, trying with all its might to make him rescue the shard before it falls into the wrong hands. But if he did, what would it do to Kimberly? This is the second time he's been unable to protect his friends from this monster. With the shard in his possession, what guarantees he'll be able to turn the tide? Kelsey didn't even seem like she took any time to try and unlock the shard's true power either. All he saw her use was her ice magic. At the very least, shouldn't that bode well for them? The knowledge that Kelsey, who's held onto the shard for 18 years, can't use it to even a fraction of its fullest potential? The twisted shadow finally bends down and plucks the wand from the ground. The moment its hand closes around the shaft, it flares with brilliant light that forces all in the tunnel to avert their eyes. As the glow gradually dies, Ethan turns back to find its crimson eyes wide with glee as it holds its prize high in the air. A tiny star rests in its black hand, winking back at him with the warmth of overflowing magic. The whole tunnel rocks in its presence. Even though it's only a third of the font, it still demands respect. With a yelp, Kimberly is thrown forward, landing at Ethan's feet. "Kim!" He manages to breathe beneath the shard's light, bending down to aid his friend. See how easy that was? The twisted shadow says coolly. Its wicked grin is the only thing that rivals that of the shard's glow as it stares back at the three wizards. Its fingers curl around the shard, snuffing out its light in an instant. It was nice seeing you again, Kel, it adds, though it doesn't sound sincere about it. It leaves them in the darkness, its triumphant laugh echoing through the derelict tunnel. Kimberly in his cold arms. The beating within Ethan dies with the shadow's exit. The shard is gone. I'm okay, Kimberly stammers. Ethan's grip on her arms tightens in frustration. I told you to stay there, he rages, though careful not to shout too loudly and injure her ears. Why didn't you? Kimberly grits her teeth, turning her head away to hide her face. With a wordless growl, he releases her and stands, redirecting his rage to Kelsey. Why did you give it the shard? Kelsey's dark expression avoids the husk's gaze as well. She turns to her ice wall, where the Yafir miners huddled together in confusion and fear. Surface without me, she instructs them. We're done for the cycle. There's a collection of shell-shocked nods as the miners set about gathering their things and themselves. Tense silence envelops the wizards as the miners slowly take their leave. Ethan steps away to attempt to untangle his racing thoughts. So many things didn't go his way. He wasn't vigilant enough, or else he would have known that they were being stalked. He thought that Kimberly wouldn't have been a factor he would have to consider. She must have found another way across the pit. Of course, Kelsey just stood there, hardly giving it her all. Who are you? Kelsey's voice cuts through the air, echoing through the tunnel sharply. He turns to give her a glare as she stares back at him from the darkness with dull eyes. A single torch illuminates her, left behind by the miners for them to use. To have come all this way with that monster. We came to warn you about it, Ethan replies through gritted teeth. Kimberly picks herself up off the ground, holding her arm as steady as she can manage. She looks Kelsey in the eyes and states, My name is Kimberly Starshield, daughter of Jay Starsong. Kelsey's icy stare softens. The cold air around the two cryomancers swirl. There is no recognition in the woman's eyes. She gazes at her daughter. Only a deep sadness. How is he? She finally asks. Kimberly doesn't reply immediately. Her body trembles as her face struggles to keep back her brewing emotions. Even though she is cast in heavy darkness, the glimmer of building tears winks at Ethan. How is he? She repeats, her voice on the verge of cracking. That's your first question? Kelsey remains still as the temperature of the tunnel sharply drops. Why did you leave? Where have you been? You never wrote? You never visited? It was because of you, Kelsey replies coolly. I couldn't fathom putting my child in the path of that monster. If I had stayed... You didn't have to stay, Kimberly bites back. Kelsey just shakes her head back at her. Her lips stiffen the longer she stares at her child. That same hesitation she had facing Electro's shadow glimmers once more. Don't get involved in this, Kelsey says at last. You shouldn't be fighting my ghosts. Sorry, but I'm already involved, Kimberly replies with a small spit, even as her eyes begin to sparkle with frustrated tears. Electro's at my house. We're trying to help him, and he wants to help you. Kelsey sucks in a breath of air at the sound of Electro's name. Alarm flashes across her face briefly before it's swallowed by her hollow sorrow. She holds her chin high, trying to appear more composed than she actually is. Her fingers begin to curl at her sides. An air of hostility fills the tunnel rather quickly. "Excuse me?" she asks cautiously. He's... Where? "He wanted to come see you himself," Kimberly explains, her voice starting to become tight with hot emotion. Little wet streaks begin to appear on her cheeks as the tears begin to fall. "He's been split in two," Ethan cuts in, stepping forward with a tense glare. "But we don't have time to stand here and tell you everything. The shard is gone, so we have to go too." He gives Kimberly a slight nudge. She sucks in a shaky breath in response, promptly turning away from Kelsey as her expression breaks. "Don't worry about the shadow," he adds rather curtly. "We'll deal with it this time." He extends a hand to Kimberly and gently presses on her back as he starts to stride off. Kelsey doesn't stop them, her alertness gradually easing the farther they get. He hates to cut things short, but they have other, more pressing matters to tend to. They were all here for the shard first and foremost, after all. And Kimberly needs some time to calm down. "Don't fight my ghosts," she mumbles at last once she feels they're far enough away from her mother, wiping her face in an ill attempt to dry it, even as the tears still fall from her eyes. She blows through her teeth, a puff of angry mist dancing through the air before them. The sadness slowly morphs itself into mocking rage. "Right. How can we not? She didn't even bother to do it in the first time. Sure, go lock your ghosts away and then run from everything." Her next breath is softer, a lot more broken. "This was a bad idea," she whispers finally. Ethan folds his arms and remains silent, biting back the snide remarks that rest just on the tip of his tongue. Everything about this excursion has become one big, bad idea. Their hopes now rest on Ryan and the third shard, wherever that may be. With any luck, Amber and Blaze will uncover something useful. What little time they might have started out with has now been cut considerably shorter, though he doesn't expect for Electro's shadow to bother following them around anymore. Not that it... Now that it has a shard in its possession, he can use that to find the remaining pieces. They reach the pit. The ice bridge has been swallowed by sparkling white snow, with threads of blue winding their way throughout, reinforcing its powdery form that turns the fragile needle into a sturdy, walkable pathway above the darkness. He turns to Kimberly, wanting to comment on the structure, but hesitates. He's not sure if he should commend her in her current state. So he holds out his hand instead, wordlessly asking if she's ready to go. She takes it with a tense squeeze. And that is where we are ending for this read aloud. Jeez, I have so much I want to comment on. So much. So, what I will start with is, the whole Gardol scene, well, most of it anyway, large part of it, I wrote it all the way back when I was still in high school. Which makes me even more disappointed with reading it back now, because there are, like, tiny details that I missed before. Like, sure, there is, like, the odd grammatical spelling mistake there too, right? But it's also, like, the description of Opal specifically. So that, I wrote that when I didn't quite have a clear picture of what I wanted her to actually look like. And the colors and outfit that I had, like, used for my mock-up of her worked for, like, the program that I was using. But, of course, then Echo came in and was like, "Hey, that's a lot. Here's a better design," and she drew a better design of Opal. So I meant to go back. Yeah, that. So, like, those are the actual clothes that she's supposed to be wearing. And at least that's supposed to be that bright orange jacket and hat. That was supposed to be what the description was like what I was supposed to write, right? Unfortunately, I didn't do that. I wrote that instead with the red jacket and blue hat. However, there is still the mention of an orange jacket in their trek up the side of Frostfall because I was editing that part after Echo did this wonderful character design for me. So unfortunately, my trash high school self is canon, and I want to disappear into a little hole and cry. But then again, the jackets do change color, so it could have been changed at some point, and you just didn't know. So it's still congruent with the lore, kind of. I saw some fun comments while I was reading. Let me see if I can find them. A pink hair moment. He's such a happy competitor. See, Lucre doesn't mind so long as he's just out and hanging out with other people. Oh, Blaze, we need your kid. The queen. No, Blaze. Did I stutter? No, Your Honor, he did not stutter. Ethan, what is love? Everyone in a 5-mile radius. Baby, don't hurt me. Ethan has to be sure that a certain figure won't attack him on his way down to the mines. What? Oh, the prompt wasn't read, Your Honor. Yes. It's not stealing, technically. Ethan, don't rip out fundamental parts of people just because they won't let you through. That's probably comparable to a war crime or something. Probably, yeah. I mean, it's not pleasant. And most people don't like it. Unless you're weird. I miss not overreacting, Kimberly. I miss it a lot. I'll be right back. You guys. You crack me up. I hate when I accidentally step my friend's bones while flying. Crunch. Oops. Sorry, Kim. Hey, thankfully they have Asna as a friend. Asna can just come along and fix everything. He heals all wounds. They say time heals all wounds, but time is just Asna. Asna heals all wounds. I noticed that there are multiple mentions of shadows being unusual prior to Electro's shadow reveal. Were any of those foreshadowing, or were they just Ethan being a fragment shadow? Being unusual prior. Oh, like are you talking about like in the first book, or are we talking about like the other main characters like Blaze? Because if we're talking about Blaze here, hmm, how much am I allowed to say? Exactly. Exactly. See, Echo gets me. Luke! Shub has made Luke art. Luke looks great. He got them legs. Anyway, to see Luke art, feel free to join the Discord server in the description below. Lucre, let's go! I'm talking about while Ethan is getting into the mines, Shadow reacts to his anger, but also we know Electra's shadow is following them. Oh, okay. So, Ethan and Shadow, since they are basically one and the same, so they can communicate with each other mentally, obviously, but Shadow, like, they each have so much attention, right? So Shadow's busy with Electro to the point where it kind of needs to flip between like watching Ethan and watching Electro. So like it can't really concentrate in two different directions, I guess you could say. So, you know, if Ethan calls out for Shadow, well then Shadow will hear and be like, okay, what's up, bro? If not, then Shadow is like, either it would need to drop in randomly and be like, hey, what's up? Or wait to be called. The shadows are around Ethan. Oh, okay. Opal's inspiration? I'll get to that in a minute. You'll never know. It could be both. Really, it could be both. Because this also goes back to the whole attention thing. Ethan has so much attention to give to the environment around him. Yes, shadows do react to his emotions somewhat, but also, they do move when they are occupied by things, such as other shadows, or Ethan. So, take it however you will. I will say it can be seen both ways. What happened between Opal and Eth? Well, Opal and Ethan, their whole thing is quite the story. So, way back in the ye olde days, Opal used to actually be part of the main cast. So it was Ethan, Opal, Kim, Amber, Jake, and Blaze. To make it even, there are 6 main characters, 3 girls, 3 boys. And Opal was in a relationship with Ethan, but she was very much like a bully type and very much not nice to Ethan at all. Very abusive relationship. He didn't really see it at the time. And it was the whole like the look look at yourself. You're in a toxic relationship. Now look at me. I am here. Me being Amber. um so then as I was actually like seriously trying to think about turning like Shadowbound and all that into a novel, I really did not like Opal's presence. I also didn't like writing asshole characters at the time. Uh she really just didn't fit in the cast, so I took her out and I put her in my my character reuse jail corner type area place, and she kind of just got put on the back burner. It's like I still wanted to do something with her, I just wasn't sure what. So when I was thinking about writing Bloodbound, I was reminded that Opal existed. I was like, oh yeah, Opal. I kind of forgot about her. This would be a great excuse to use her again. So in Bloodbound, they're exes. Also, well, I try to imply that Opal and Ethan also had a toxic relationship because Opal is not nice. She's a little manipulative. Also very irresponsible, as you can see. And it's supposed to tie into, like, all of the other things that Ethan's going through as a character. Like, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. And what is a healthy relationship? Baby, also don't hurt me. Hey, what's up? I'm Shadowbound, back with another combat tutorial. Now do 50 push-ups. Ooh. So, Opal doesn't really appear outside of Bloodbound. She is a Bloodbound specific character because, well, if she did appear outside of Bloodbound, that would pose so many complications and also implications, mostly complications. Also, how in the world was I struggling that hard to read my own writing? Olka preparing rice! Help me. Help me. I swear, I can read. Reading aloud is definitely a skill. 100% a skill. For whatever reason, my eyes and my brain were just not comprehending the words. I don't get. Regardless. Yeah, so I never really liked Opal. So this is why she's such a she's a main side character if I were to classify her on my hierarchy chart of character importance. She is a main side character. She helps facilitate the plot. The plot cannot happen without her, but she also is only here for this one area to do this one thing. And now you're gonna have to wait a week for the resolution of the Gardwall stuff. And also the Mirage stuff, but mostly the Gardwall stuff. Teehee. Because you want to eat rice. Is rice real in ASTRIA? Well, maybe not. Maybe not on the wizard side of ASTRIA. Maybe on the ocean side, where it's a little bit warmer. And where there's more water. And more space to grow rice. Wizards don't have rice. I can tell you that much. The wizards do not have rice. Will the live reading art ever be sold as coloring pages? You know, that's a good idea. Echo, why don't we do that? Matthew be like, where's the rice? They're missing out? They really are. We could totally do that. Yeah, sure. I need to... Let me get an audio source in here for you then. Oh wait, no, the wrong one. It has been a while since I've had to do this. Matthew mentioned Matthew becomes a chillet to eat rice again. I would hate to be a wizard in this world then. Rice is too important to give up. The rice is good. Rice is fun. It would be... It would be that, and then if I undeafen... Oh.
Hello?
Hi. Okay,
Can you hear me?
It looks like they can hear you.
Okay, thank God. I just wanted to speak a little bit about the coloring page because it's really hard to just, write everything out. I have been thinking about the coloring pages because we have been talking about a coloring book actually before this. I would also like to draw a couple extra scenes as well, just to see, like, if I can flesh out the coloring books a little more. Because then we could do like a Shadowbound coloring book and then a Bloodbound coloring book, or I'd have to wait for the trilogy to be out in order to do the trilogy coloring book. So how soon do you guys want it? But also, yes, I have been thinking about it. I have plans. And that was all I wanted to say.
We hear you, and coloring book soon, TM, maybe.
Perchance.
It is an idea. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, I will go back to not speaking anymore.
Okay, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Don't worry, guys. If I beta read the next one, I'll be sure to try and get rice into the next one. Oh boy. I'm watching you, AV. I want a coloring book. I'd buy. I give my sister one too. I'd buy a coloring book as well. Well, we'll keep you posted on the coloring book. Beta notes, not enough rice. Imagine if the wizards are the only ones with the soy sauce. It'd be so tragic. Wizards have soy sauce, and everyone else has rice. We need to open up trade again, guys. ASTRIA must be united so that they can have proper rice again. Rice and soy. Make ASTRIA a globe again. Agree. I say as I'm the one that made it not a globe in the first place. The next big war is over who gets soy sauce. The cabal be like... Real. What else? Oh, the Mirage chapter, or at least the beginning of the Mirage stuff. In chapter, what, that was 8? Chapter 8? I don't remember my own chapters. Yes, in chapter 8, that was a beta reader note. Beforehand it was the entirety of the Gardal adventure and then the entirety of the Mirage adventure. Or Mirage/Solari adventure, like right after that. But then I was given the suggestion that how about I put the Mirage stuff in between the Gardal stuff. Just like a small little detail. I think it works better this way. I mean, naturally, it got published like this. Also, you get a splash of Lucre in nice warm desert place after trudging through cold, wet blizzard conditions with the others. I threw sand at you. Pocket sand. And I guess the other thing I can comment on is the fight scene in chapter 9 actually was rewritten many times. Originally it was going to happen in the giant pit and not the tunnel, but I just could not wrap my head around such a large 3D space. So I narrowed it. Ha. I narrowed it down to a smaller scope so that I could easily like visualize it in my brain. Because how I like to do fight scenes is I like in my head, I 3D model the space and then I try and like write in the book like where the characters are within that 3D space so that like I don't lose track of what's going on. And then it also doesn't feel 2D like they're all fighting on the same plane. So if my brain can't wrap my head my brain can't wrap my head. So if my brain can't wrap itself around like the 3D space, then I struggle greatly. So I've discovered that doing fight scenes in small rooms or long tunnels I do the best at. They cannot pass the blizzard without the light lizard. True, he must do big light beam to scare all the snow away. If my brain can't head, help. It's them! The boys! Your brain can't wrap your head, skill issue. Your brain can't wrap your head around itself. That's what we call severe trauma. Don't tell me that I get severe head trauma from reading my own writing. That that would make me sad. I hurt myself in my own confusion. Well, is there anything else? Any burning questions people have about the first part of Act 2 that they would like to have answered in some way? Stall for time while Echo finishes doing all of the shading stuff. Jake is looking dashing, by the way. Poor Jake, getting battered by the blizzard like that, turned into a Jakesicle. Is mayonnaise an instrument? No, Patrick, mayonnaise is not an instrument. Look, if you dip your little Jake in ice, if you dip your little Jake in ice, you get a Jakesicle. I like the foreshadowing of Jake not being able to handle the cold. I smile. For all the people that don't understand yet. You will understand soon. Back during the Shadow and Electro scene at the beginning, you mentioned glamour. Question, why did Electro change his hair color? Do other beings use that magic as well? Ah, yes. So glamour is actually very popular. It is like the most common form of it technically classifies as like a illusion magic, but it's the most common like magic that is used. Jeez, calling shove out here, huh? Anyway, um yes, so it can be hard to tell sometimes, like if they keep the same hair structure, I guess you could say, but just change the color. It's really hard to know if they just change the color. Though, like, who has naturally bright blue hair? You'd be surprised. But anyway, um uh but if you like Electro said, if he used glamour to make himself look more jacked than he actually is, well, he's still limited by his body's actual, like, physical capabilities. So he might look like he's able to bench press 120 pounds, but he's actually able to do closer to 50 in such example. So stuff like that's a little bit easier to tell. A simple, like, physical test or how even touching the thing sometimes will reveal that it is glamour, and it's purely for like aesthetics. Like again, who has naturally blue hair and who has naturally crimson eyes apart from the fragment shadows. If you want certain like aspects of color to yourself to match like your school outfit, if you will, you would use glamour to give yourself those colors. Electro is a diva and is all about fashion. He wears all the buckles, all the leather, and tears all of his clothes just because he knows that holes are better. Or something like that. I am willing to add Electro as a diva to my belief system. I mean, I can see that. To some extent. If the main cast was an orchestra, band, other music group, what instruments would they be? Oh boy, I don't know. Huh. I think Kimberly would be violin. Amber would be like a flute or a clarinet, something in the winds. Ethan would be on the drums because he's emo like that. Blaze would have a guitar, probably an electric guitar. Jake, I don't know. Jake, I just don't know. Yes, Ethan has the drums because he's emo like that. Shadow would be mayonnaise. Shadow would be holding a mayo jar, trying to make music out of it, but is just eating the mayonnaise. Oh no, Jake would be a trumpet. Jake would love playing a trumpet, I think. Luke would also love to play a trumpet, I also think. Or like one of them's the trumpet and the other one's the trombone or a tuba. Oh, something within that family. Jake is pyrotechnics. Yes, he's the stage manager and also makes sure that the fireworks don't burn the house down. Jake is 100% a trumpet or mellow. Hitting the mayonnaise jar with the mayo to produce sound. Ew. Shadow would be doing its best. Lucre is too sweet to be a trumpet player. Yeah, but also, like, imagine Lucre doing the trumpet jazz with all of his spry little "I'm from the desert and I love everything" energy. I hear you snickering over there. Um, Electro is the lead singer with an electric guitar. Yes. Okay, then Blaze would either be the acoustic guitar or he'd be on the keyboard. Actually, I think he would be on the keyboard. Blaze would be keyboard player. And Opal gets escorted out of the venue because she's the crazy fan that is trying to get with Ethan, and Ethan doesn't want to talk to her. You think Electro's bass? I think either could work. Either bass or electric guitar. I don't know. After a certain point, I'm just throwing instruments around the room and seeing what sticks. I hear you snickering over there. Alternative Blaze is the #1 cowbell player in Astria. More cowbell. He's just emo enough to think bass is cooler. I think he's more punk enough to think electric's cooler, personally. Which, I say that. I say that. Moving on. Yeah, so glamour. Fun stuff. Ethan can participate in glamour a little bit, but up to a certain extent. If he wants to change anything about his body, that's a bit of a painful process. But that doesn't stop people sometimes. He colors himself his element colors, so Electro would definitely choose his instrument with electricity in mind. Well, also, like anything electric, he can just play because he is an electromancer. He produces electricity. He can power it himself. All he needs to do is hook it up to a speaker. Thank you for the information, oh great storm. Strom. Shove. I'm totally not gonna do anything with this. Shove. I look at you. And I am worried. Slightly. Not too much, though. It can even extend to, like, clothes as well. Just a tiny bit. I don't usually do that. Like, what everyone wears is what everyone wears, for the most part. Like, that those are clothes that they own. But you can change the color of your outfits if you don't like how it was originally made. And then you can just magic yourself wearing an entirely different outfit altogether if you want. But of course, that still comes with the whole, if anyone bumps into you and actually takes notice and pays close attention, they'll probably realize that you're not actually wearing a big fluffy prom dress. Just saying. I think Shub is planning something. I think Shub is planning something too. But most of Shub's plans are very fun. And therefore I don't mind too much. Hey, look at them! Ta-da! Well, staying with the schedule, the next reading session will be on the 20th, the day before Father's Day, here in the States. So, I'm gonna go grab a snack and fill up my water, and I will see you all for the next reading, hopefully. I hope you have an amazing time zone. Just as a quick reminder, you can buy the books on Amazon at the link in the description below, or in the pinned message in the chat, if you have been enjoying the book so far. And do feel free to recommend it to others that you think might enjoy the ASTRIA trilogy and probably are hemming and hawing about whether or not this is right for them. The readings are free for both books, so feel free to share it around. All right, goodbye, everyone.